Chapter 1221. Headmaster Chin and Old Antique had already been waiting on the guest sofa on the first floor for a long time. At the bottom of the building, Jiang Xiaoche, dressed in an exquisite suit, personally came down to greet them with a very professional smile on his face. Sorry for the long wait. The chairman would like to speak upstairs. Very well. Headmaster Chin nodded. As soon as they got up, Jiang Xiaoche smiled insincerely and praised them. I've long heard of Headmaster Chin and Teacher Wang's reputations. It's my great fortune to be able to meet you today. Xiaoche grew up under LoveLore Water Curtain Group's tutelage and learned management in a completely closed environment. It's truly a pity that I didn't have the opportunity to experience life at school. Then, Secretary Jiang is welcome to experience life at my number 60 high school at any time, Headmaster Chin said casually when he heard this. Well said, well said. Jiang Xiaoche smiled as he led the two of them to the elevator. This was Old Antique's first time meeting Jiang Xiaoche, and he felt that this greasy-haired and powdered young man gave off a strong aura of a member of society. To be honest, he didn't like him very much. If a cultivator's worldly aura was too strong, it would also affect their realms. Old Antique's experience in the cultivation world was that he had his own set of rules for observing people's words and body language. Hence, his impression of Jiang Xiaoche wasn't very good. As his secretary, the most important thing was to be able to work quietly. A glib tongue would cause big trouble sooner or later. Old Antique shook his head inwardly. He didn't directly expose this point, nor could he explain to Old Man Sun why he had left such a person on his side. For Sun Yiyuan to be able to run his business so well, his ability to read people might not be inferior to Old Antique's. Perhaps this Jiang Xiaoche was also his pawn. The elevator swiftly rose to the highest point of the building. Jiang Xiaoche led the way, and Headmaster Chin and Old Antique passed through the long corridor leading to the office. On both sides of the corridor were calligraphy and paintings by famous artists, which Headmaster Chin secretly marveled at. When all was said and done, this was LoveLore Water Curtain Group's strength. Any one of the paintings in the corridor would be enough for number 60 high to renovate 2 or 3 times over. In the huge office, Old Man Sun sat on a spacious sofa and fiddled with the tea set on the table. He had already poured 3 cups. As soon as Headmaster Chin and Old Antique were let in, Jiang Xiaoche consciously stood to one side. Then, he quietly withdrew from the office, closed the door, and skillfully stood guard outside. Mr. Sun's foresight is divine. It seems that you already know the purpose of our trip. Seeing this scene, Headmaster Chin knew that his and Old Antique's uninvited visit had already been completely controlled by this grizzled old man in front of him who didn't lose his heroic spirit. He had long heard that LoveLore Water Curtain Group had eyes all over the world, and that their intelligence network was comparable to that of Battle Sect, especially in Songhai City. This time, Headmaster Chin and Old Antique thoroughly experienced this power. You don't have to be so formal with me. Sit down and talk. Teacher Wang, you don't have to be too rigid. You are one of Tianqiang's most trusted people. Old Man Sun smiled, then pushed the tea on the table in front of the two of them. I can't thank Teacher Wang enough for taking care of Rongrong at school. You're too polite, Mr. Sunday. I'm just doing my duty as a teacher. Old Antique smiled. He had just picked up his tea when Old Man Sun's next question immediately froze him. I wonder if Teacher Wang's junior brother is doing well. When he said this, there wasn't the slightest ripple on Sun Yiyuan's face. He still had a benevolent smile on his face, but there was a bone-chilling coldness in it. Teacher Wang has a junior brother. Headmaster Chen was astonished, even he didn't know about this. Old Antique had thought that his identity and that of his junior brother, Taoist Taotai, had been concealed very well, and could be said to be flawless. Who would have thought that he would suffer a setback in front of this old man's son today? But it was clear that the other party didn't intend to expose him directly, and instead indirectly gave him a show of strength. Yes, of course he does. Old Antique was helpless, and could only go along with the flow. He's a junior brother I haven't been in touch with for many years. He's also a teacher, and is currently working at another school. Zhu Kong, that's not very nice of you. Our number 60 high school is in need of talent. Wouldn't it be better if you directly referred him to our school? Headmaster Chen was immediately unhappy. His teaching is very average. In fact, you've always had high standards and high standards. In your eyes, average is already outstanding enough. We can talk about this later. I believe that Teacher Wang isn't deliberately hiding it. I'm afraid that his junior brother's teaching quality really isn't high. Old Man Sun smoothed things over. In Old Antique's eyes, his trademark kind smile was now completely a smile with a dagger hidden behind it. Out of the corner of his eye, Old Antique secretly sized up Sunny Yuan through the steam from the teacup, and felt that this person was extremely dangerous and unfathomable. Tianxiang, you're here for Yi Jiang this time, right? Then, Old Man Sun got straight to the point. Sure enough, nothing can be hidden from Mr. Sun's eyes. Headmaster Chen was non-committal. I also know the opinion of a psychologist. He wants our Rong to have another fake match with him and deliberately lose to him. Don't worry, Mr. Sun, the match is pseudo-public. We've arranged for everyone inside, and the match won't be leaked. Furthermore, it won't affect Huaguo Water Curtain Group's shares. That's not what I'm worried about. But a fake match will ultimately affect our Sun family's face. Old Man Sun said, besides, this little guy is General Yi's adopted son. Even if it's a fake match to treat this little guy's psychological problems, shouldn't that Blade Master come to me personally? The 10 generals are busy with official business. Mr. Sun should understand, I don't care if he's the 10 generals or ketchup, since I'm asking for help, I should have an attitude. But since you've come personally this time, Tianxiang, it's not like I can't give you face. Old Antique snickered in his heart. After going around in circles for so long, everything was just as he had imagined. This old fox had indeed started to raise his conditions. Mr. Sun, please speak. As long as it's not too excessive, we can discuss it. Headmaster Chen was a little nervous. He didn't know what on earth Sunny Yuan wanted. To tell you the truth, for some reason, our Rong might need to take a break from school for a while. During this break, I'll invite the best teachers to teach her at home. At this point, Old Man Sun couldn't help but sigh, and even his voice began to tremble. But you two also know that our Rong's feelings for the students and teachers of the school this half a semester are hard to cut off in a short time. Her parents died early, and as her grandfather, I can't bear to let Rong endure this kind of pain. Then Mr. Sun means. Hearing this, Headmaster Chen seemed to have understood a little. I hope that the students in your school's elite class can take turns coming to our Sun family side hall to accompany our Rong in class. I'll give a high compensation to the students who accompany her. Compensation. Material compensation, as well as emotional compensation. Whatever you want, as long as my Sun family can do it, we'll provide it. Old Man Sun said, I've already written out the reading attendance list. Can I take a look first? Headmaster Chen wiped at his sweat. Of course. Sunny Yuan took out the list which he had prepared beforehand from his pocket. Headmaster Chen and Old Antique took it and looked at it. Sure enough, Old Man Sun had already made a detailed plan on the roster. Designated study companion on Monday, Wang Ling designated study companion on Tuesday, Wang Ling Wednesday, Wang Ling, Friday, or Wang Ling. Headmaster Chen and Old Antique. What happened to the rotation? Chapter 12:22. During class that day, Wang Ling stared blankly at the blackboard with his head in his hands, his eyelids twitching wildly. Even when he looked in the mirror in the bathroom, he could see the evil look on his face, the dark clouds above his head, and the feeling that death was coming. It wasn't until the end of the day in the afternoon that his eyelids stopped twitching abnormally. Sunny Yuan's negotiations with Headmaster Chin and Old Antique ended on bad terms. Headmaster Chin couldn't agree to Old Man Sun's conditions because he couldn't make the decision on Wang Ling's behalf. The act of paying to accompany a student to study smacked of privilege. The Sun family's family was superior. Wouldn't it affect the child's self-esteem if they used money to find a student whose family wasn't as wealthy as the Sun family to accompany them? Number 60 High School's academic achievements were certainly important, but Qin Tiansheng actually paid more attention to the children's psychological development. To be honest, he felt that Old Man Sun's behavior was a little excessive. He felt that it was fine to just suggest that a teacher from number 60 High take some time out to tutor him. Moreover, tutoring was one thing, but the teacher who provided the tutoring couldn't charge a single cent otherwise. This matter would change. On the way back, the atmosphere in the private car was very low. Old Antique stared out the window, his voice as calm as when he had left. "Is this really okay?" Headmaster Chin skillfully took out a cigarette from the inside pocket of his shirt. Using the quick friction between his index finger and thumb, he lit the cigarette and took a deep drag. A bitter smile hung on his face. "I have my own principles and bottom line. If I, the headmaster, don't follow the rules, how can I lead the teachers and children under me?" "I understand." Old Antique nodded. But after this trip, he and Headmaster Chin could be sure of one thing: even if the negotiations didn't come to an agreement, the Sun family wouldn't give a single cent less for number 60 High School construction investment. With the Sun family's financial resources, they wouldn't be so stingy as to take back their previous promise because of such a small matter. It was a taboo for businessmen to break their promises. Given Mr. Sun's character, do you think he's the kind of person who would make unreasonable demands? Old Antique suddenly asked after a moment of silence in the car. Headmaster Chin frowned. "Looks like you've noticed it too. The Sun family is in trouble." "It should be big trouble." Headmaster Chin nodded. For Sunny Yuan to be in such a desperate situation, it must have a lot to do with Lotus Sunday. "Yes, but I have another question." "Speak." "What exactly is Sunny Yuan's strength?" "Sun God," Headmaster Chin asked. "On the same level as the 10 generals?" Old Antique was astonished. It was no wonder that Old Man Sun was fearless when facing the Sword Saint. Old Antique. On the other side, Wang Ling was sitting cross-legged on his bed barefoot, trying his best to figure out why his eyelids had twitched so wildly in the afternoon. Then, his mind was filled with the image of Old Man Sun's benevolent face that hid a dagger behind his smile. Sure enough, his visit to Lotus Sun the day before yesterday had created a butterfly effect, causing trouble to keep coming. But he had already checked Lotus Sun with the king's eye, and there wasn't anything wrong with her body, nor was she cursed, so he didn't really understand why Old Man Sun was so nervous. Some of the words of Jianghu's charlatans could be ignored. If one were to take it too seriously, the one who would get hurt would be himself. Were Wang at Wang at Wang Old Sun Old Wang the old of the and the of Sun Lotus Sun was Old Man Sun's only granddaughter, so it was understandable that the old man doted on Wang Ling. Wang Ling had felt this intergenerational doting before from Old Man Wang. Old Man Wang was already suffering from dementia, but he still remembered to bring Wang Ling fruit. He had ridden a tricycle from the village little by little to the entrance of the villa. This had shocked Wang Ling so much that he felt he would never forget it for the rest of his life. It was Father Wang who cooked tonight. It was less than a month before the due date, and Mother Wang needed peace and quiet to nurse the baby, so Father Wang obediently took over the housework, including washing and cleaning, and even cooking. But the problem was that Father Wang had never cooked before, so the night before, Mother Wang had personally come to talk to Wang Ling. She didn't ask for anything else, and only asked him to enlighten the kitchen utensils in the house so that Father Wang's enthusiasm for cooking wouldn't be dampened. Wang Ling was an obedient child, so he would naturally do as Mother Wang wished. So the dishes that Father Wong brought out tonight indeed looked pretty good, but they were all made with the effects of legendary kitchen utensils. With these utensils in hand, even someone who didn't know how to cook would look like a female live streamer with a beauty filter. Sour shredded potatoes, spicy boiled fish, grandma's braised pork, steamed tendon meatballs, mixed salad vegetables, it tastes good. Mother Wong picked up some with her chopsticks, a happy smile on her face. Oh my god, is that true or not? This is my first time cooking, and I just followed the steps in the video. I never thought I'd be so talented. Father Wong was also astonished by his own skills. At that moment, Wong Ling looked at the pots, bowls, ladles, spoons, and spatulas that he had enlightened. According to the feedback from the king's eye, the durability of these utensils had already dropped to 1/99th. Wong Ling sighed endlessly in his heart as he ate the dishes that were almost identical to those made in restaurants. It was a good thing that Father Wong had later become a web novelist, otherwise he would have definitely been a good seedling to become a nuclear bomb. He had only made one meal, but the utensils that he had personally enchanted had almost been scrapped. It was clear how astonishing Father Wong's destructive power was. Father Wong had a habit of turning on the TV to listen to the news when he ate. As soon as the channel switched to True Central Channel 1, the dignified and well-dressed female anchor suddenly received an urgent document from the side. The female anchor's face was calm and collected, reflecting her extremely high professionalism. Next, we'll broadcast an urgent news. Songhai City has just cracked a case of impersonating a killer, and the suspect, QXX, is currently being urgently interrogated at Songhai First Prison. It is reported that QXX has plotted a number of criminal professional assassinations, and impersonated the leader of the killer world to issue challenges everywhere to illegally earn high challenge fees. Mother Wong looked at the news in amazement. Since when does True Central TV speak up for the killer world nowadays? Father Wong smiled. Honey, you don't understand. I heard that after Shadow Stream was taken down, the killer world started to turn over a new leaf, and has worked with the cultivation police to solve a number of cases in the last few months. Mother Wong scared. The boss of the killer world is really weird. Wong Ling, you're the big boss. Chapter 1223. After dinner, Wong Ling and Battle Sect verified that the criminal the CCTV female live streamer was talking about was in fact the person who had been pretending to be Mother Wong and acting as Numinous Mother. This person's full name was Keon Duncan, and he was a foreign cultivator with blonde hair and blue eyes. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sent Wong Ling a photo of him. This man was thin and didn't look like Wong Ling's stereotypical impression of Western cultivators. Of course, Wong Ling had to admit that he was a little inflexible in this regard, but to his knowledge, Western cultivators did indeed have certain requirements for fitness. At an International Alliance of Cultivators meeting, whether a Western cultivator was a cultivator or not could be seen from the size of their muscles. In contrast, Eastern cultivators paid more attention to the sense of bone, because their muscles would naturally grow as they cultivated, but they could use magic to condense their muscles so that they didn't look so exaggerated. So in comparison, the cultural difference between Eastern and Western cultivators could be seen in muscles. One was reserved, while the other was bold and passionate. But that didn't rule out the possibility that a small number of Eastern and Western cultivators might be influenced by each other's cultures and choose to walk the other's path. Brother Ling, he wasn't like this before. After Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sent Keon's current photo, he then sent Keon's ID photo. Just as Wong Ling had initially thought, Keon in the ID photo was indeed very muscular. But the key wasn't his appearance, but the ID itself. Wong Ling was astonished to discover that this Keon was actually from SBP. SBP? What's that? On the side, Loopy Toad didn't understand. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said on the phone, it's an investigation organization that works side by side with the SCP Foundation. The SCP is dedicated to investigating all kinds of unconfirmed cultivation secrets, magic treasures, or mutant spirit beasts. SBP is equivalent to a detective investigation organization under the banner of the International Alliance of Cultivators, but everything it investigates is based on evidence. They definitely have another purpose in visiting Huaxiao Nation this time. They're now investigating the possibility that Keon is involved in espionage. Wang Ling gently rubbed his chin. He felt that this Keon might be carrying some unspeakable secret. Based on current leads, Keon has been in Huaxiao Nation for a very long time to investigate something. In order to thoroughly prove his identity as a native cultivator, he changed his appearance and disguised himself as an Easterner. Furthermore, he pretended to be Numinous Mother to swindle funds for his activities and investigations. This SBP is so stingy. Why aren't you paying? It's very obvious that Keon doesn't intend to take the risk. Once he's caught, he'll be sent back straight away. When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said this, he was actually a little puzzled. Based on the current situation, Keon didn't do anything bad while he was pretending to be the Numinous Mother. The people he had killed were basically all wanted criminals, including Dark Ancestor CS Sanshao, who had died in the stalactite cave after his resurrection. He had also died at Keon's hands. This person's strength was also very strong. If it weren't for Grenade-throwing superior battle prowess, he wouldn't have been able to find clues in such a short time and take down Korn. Did he say anything? Asked Loopy Toad. Not a word so far. Furthermore, a powerful forbidden spell had been cast on his body. If he said half a word, he would die. Forcefully breaking it would also trigger the effects of the forbidden spell. That's why I'm calling Brother Ling this time to ask if he has any good ideas, said Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal over the phone. Although his realm was high, there were all kinds of forbidden spells in the cultivation world. In addition, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't particularly proficient in spells to begin with, so he was now stuck in this predicament. If he could, Grenade-throwing actually didn't want to trouble Wang Ling. But the problem was that this SBP was a little cunning, even forcibly dismantling it could endanger a person's life, which was a little difficult. And Wang Ling definitely had a way to deal with it. But Wang Ling still needed to observe for a while before he could be sure what this forbidden spell was. That night, Loopy Toad received Wang Ling's instructions and went to Songhai First Prison in his place. When the two guards at the prison gate saw the fluorescent green-furred dog appear in the dark, they immediately opened the gate and let it in. It was now somewhat famous in Battle Sect, and this feeling of being revered made Loopy Toad feel very good. It felt that it had found its social status as a demon king in the demon world. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was standing guard at the prison gate. When he saw Loopy Toad, he immediately came forward to greet it. Brother Ling didn't come. Although he was smiling, Loopy Toad could clearly sense a trace of disappointment in his tone. Loopy Toad walked in without raising its head. Little Master Ling still has homework to finish, so he doesn't need to do these trivial things himself. It's not a little. It's a new type of problem. The two gremlins haven't completely mastered it yet. Young Master Ling has to do it once first. Jiu Lu Wei, this was a very good reason, and for a moment, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't refute it. As expected of Brother Ling. Even if the sky fell down, it wouldn't stop him from finishing his homework. After a brief silence, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, "But if Brother Ling doesn't come, who else can solve this forbidden spell?" "I can." After saying that, Loopy Toad spat out a glass bottle from its mouth, and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw a floating eyeball inside. Although it had already been taken out, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal recognized it at one glance as Wang Ling's dead fish eye. Little Master Ling had me bring an eyeball, and it's enough to solve the forbidden spell. As expected of Brother Ling. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help praising him as he held the glass bottle devoutly. Don't do strange things to this glass bottle. Although this eyeball has been taken out, little Master Ling can still feel it. Brother Dog, you're being too polite. How could a righteous person like me do strange things to Brother Ling's eyeball? The only person in this world who can do strange things is that big brother of Brother Ling's. Loopy Toad chuckled, thinking that the crow laughing at the pig was also very interesting. One man and one dog arrived at the interrogation room. Cowan was wearing the spirit shackles as he ate a boxed lunch that Warden Liang had provided. Because of the forbidden spell, Warden Liang knew that it was useless for him to ask. It was better to let Cowan eat something first, lest this foreigner find an excuse to shirk responsibility after the curse was broken. After all, their prison's attitude toward prisoners had always been pretty good. It was just that Warden Liang hadn't expected this Cowan to have such an astonishing appetite. He had already eaten more than 120 portions of crispy chicken drumstick rice. The empty meal boxes piled up like a small mountain next to Cowan. This SBP is too stingy, they don't even pay for food. Look at how hungry this kid is. When Loopy Toad rushed over, it was stupefied by the scene in front of it. This guy is actually a match for that wildebeest of Een. Little Silver's appetite has gone down recently, and he says he wants to lose weight. He doesn't even order takeout anymore. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, he eats meat to grow his body, and his wings haven't grown at all. He can't fly anymore. Cowan. At that moment, Loopy Toad stared at the blue-eyed young man who was eating rice in the interrogation room. As soon as the young man raised his head, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pulled the cork out of the glass bottle, and Wang Ling's king's eye directly turned into a flash of light that appeared in front of Cowan. Buzz! The color of the king's eye turned white, and it gave off a pure and holy light. The entire interrogation room was instantly enveloped in a dazzling light. As expected of Brother Ling, this is the effect of eye cleansing, which can purify all curses. It can be considered a normal ability. Previously, my lord's eyes had the effect of pregnant eyes, but my lord got rid of this ability. Pregnant eyes. Whoever it stares at will get pregnant. After saying this, Loopy Toad felt extremely helpless. It felt that Wang Ling had some foresight. If this pregnant eyes ability really existed, and a few more little Wang Lings appeared out of nowhere in the world, the earth might directly blow up. If you like the Immortal King's daily life, please collect the Immortal King's daily life. Chapter 1224. At that moment, the SBP, the International Alliance of Cultivators, was holding a secret meeting. 7 black figures appeared at the meeting table. These were the SBP's envoys, and they could jointly decide and vote on the organization's next action plan. To ensure the fairness of the vote, the 7 people chosen by the Alliance as envoys had their identities concealed from each other from the day the SBP was established, thus eliminating the possibility of winning them over internally. As an extremely prestigious investigation organization affiliated with the Alliance, the coordinates of Dark Ancestor C.S. Sanshao, who had shocked the world back then, had been calculated by these 7 people. Unfortunately, because of a major mistake, they had been a step too late at the last step, and hadn't been able to capture that dark ancestor alive. In the end, C.S. Sanshao had died of conceit and carelessness, as he couldn't withstand the spirit power of the heavenly vein valve. In order to preserve the organization's reputation, the 7 envoys of the SBP finally agreed to promote a hero, and this hero was Ojhua's ancestor, Zhuo Butong. For more information, please refer to Chapter 1105, Dark Ancestor C.S. Sanshao and Zhuo Butong, Judgment, have invited everyone here this time to say one thing. The black figure in the middle of the 7 seats spoke in a sharp and comical voice. Everyone's voices had been edited so that it was impossible to tell if they were men or women. Since they didn't know each other's names, they could only call each other by their code names. The seats in each meeting were fixed, and the person who was now sitting in seat number 4 called himself Judgment. Is something wrong? Asked the person in seat number 1. Her code name was Moon, which was a very feminine code name, but that didn't mean that the person in seat number 1 was a woman. Cyan Duncan has been discovered. Judgment's voice sounded especially serious, and the scores in the room instantly started to become tense. Cohen was sent to Washoe Nation 20 years ago, and has been flawless all these years. How was he discovered? Everyone was puzzled. In order for Cohen to better integrate into the other side, they had even cut off all contact with him and placed all their faith in him, hoping that he could investigate the whole story and eventually return to the Foundation. It's because of Battle Sect, said Star in seat number 2. No one knew where Star came from, but this person seemed to have the prophetic ability of an astrologer, just like his code name, and often had more information than anyone else. Not bad. Judgment nodded. Originally, Keown's method of disguising himself as the primogenitor of the world of assassins, Numinous Mother, was indeed impeccable. However, in a recent mission, he had exposed himself. A freak with a strange resurrection spell appeared in Washoe Nation, and this person resurrected Xie Sanshao. I see. At this moment, Third Sun sighed. Back then, Keown was just one step away from annihilating this Dark Ancestors man. This matter should also be our mistake. He had not considered such an unexpected situation. Keown lost his mind and stabbed Dark Ancestor 862 times in 1 second, killing him on the spot. In the 4th seat, Judgment said, he made up for his regret, but at the same time, he also exposed his whereabouts. In the end, the War Sect found an opportunity. At this moment, the black shadow in the 7th seat suddenly flickered and disappeared on the spot. The fool has left again. Forget it, he's always like this. Bad signal at home. Who knows what he's doing? Judgment was already used to the fool leaving midway through the meeting so many times. He then turned his gaze to Tank in the 5th seat and Fate in the 6th seat. What do the two of you think? Tank's voice was as steady and rough as his code name. I'm not worried at all that Keown will leak the secret, he's always been tight-lipped. Furthermore, he doesn't have the guts to divulge this secret. The 7 of us have cast 7 forbidden spells on him. Once they're activated, everyone in his family will be implicated. He should be well aware of the consequences of divulging the secret. Fate remained silent. Although he or she was present, it actually didn't make a difference whether he or she was present or not. However, Fate had never been absent from any meeting, and would often mention some important matters at critical moments. The others waited for a moment, but seeing that Fate had no intention of speaking, Judgment, as the host, cleared his throat and continued the discussion. As Tank said, I also believe that Keown won't divulge the secret. No one in the world can break the 7 forbidden spells we've set up together. We made the decision 20 years ago, and for the sake of the Foundation, everyone, please continue to stand firm. Songhai First Prison. Prison guards stood on 2 sides, and security was extremely tight. The scale of this was no less than when the old devil had just been sent to prison. In order to prevent any accidents, Warden Liang had set up what looked like a nesting doll outside. In total, there were no less than 50 10-man patrol teams patrolling the perimeter of the prison. Grenade-throwing senior immortal judged that Keown had a big secret that no one knew about. The SBP had cast multiple forbidden spells on this person, and once this secret was revealed, his entire family would be wiped out. This level of threat was often directly proportional to the importance of the secret behind it. 20 years ago, Keown had already been lurking in Washoe Nation to carry out a secret investigation on a certain matter. It was hard not to be suspicious that the Foundation had deliberately and secretly plotted to bury this person in Washoe Nation. Mr. Keown, even if you don't say anything now, we can still arrest you on espionage charges. We can lock you up here for 100 years, 200 years, together with the 3 most famous people in our prison. They're currently short of one. I've been looking for a long time, but I haven't found anyone suitable to lock up. Warden Liang spoke to Keon through a telepathic device through a glass wall. He paid close attention to Keon's expression and observed the other party's micro-expressions. Inducing confessions was a set of rules that Warden Liang was very familiar with, but it was completely ineffective against Keon. He had received professional SBP training and was very cultured. Even after the forbidden spell had been removed, he still refused to say anything. No matter what Warden Liang asked, there wasn't the slightest ripple of emotion on his face. After closing the conversation button, Warden Liang looked at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal next to him, feeling rather helpless. What do we do, Senior Immortal? Ordinary interrogation doesn't seem to work on him. Everyone has their weakest point in their heart, and no one is invulnerable. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at the young man in front of him through the glass. If he doesn't want to talk, perhaps we can start with someone close to him first. Warden Liang, do you know where Keon used to live? We're still investigating, but we only have a general idea, said Warden Liang. It's fine, Brother Dog happens to be here. Let it track him around the area, and we should be able to find Keon very quickly. The two of them hit it off. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was just about to take Loopy Toad out to investigate. At that moment, Warden Liang suddenly received an urgent report. A stream of light exploded in front of his eyes to form a string of characters. This was news from Songhai City's Huaxiao Alliance. How could this be? Warden Liang stared at the content with a face full of disbelief. What's going on? Songhai City's Huaxiao Alliance wants us to release him. Release him? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Loopy Toad were stunned at the same time. Chapter 1225. Release him. Why did they want him to be released? Warden Liang and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal both felt that this was very strange. Tonight, True CCTV had broadcast the news of Cohen impersonating Numinous Mother as an emergency to the whole nation. War's sect had Huaxiao Alliance's General Alliance as their backer, and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had looked for people from the General Alliance to arrange the news tonight in order to announce to the other branches that this matter would soon be taken over by the General Alliance. But now, a mere branch actually dared to stand in their way. This was simply unimaginable. How interesting. Wasn't our operation authorized by the General Alliance? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. The General Alliance's procedures are complicated, and the relevant documents haven't been approved in time. Although War Sect is affiliated with the General Alliance, the truth is that it doesn't have the authority to enforce the law. Warden Liang patted the table. This branch is very close to us, so we got here first. Although I don't know who instructed it, it's in line with the rules and procedures. When Warden Liang said this, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that the situation was starting to become interesting. Knowing that the General Alliance was about to take over this matter, a branch had actually jumped out in advance to obstruct them. A branch president wouldn't have the guts to do this. Someone must have instructed this behind the scenes. Who's the president of Songhai City's branch? Heartwarming. Why does it sound like a foreigner's name? He's an overseas Chinese to begin with, and it was only this year that he was transferred to Songhai City's Huaxiao Alliance branch to be the president. Warden Liang showed him the communication talisman he had just received, which had the double stamp of Songhai City's Huaxiao Alliance branch as well as President Heartwarming's name on it. There was no mistaking it. What level is a president? Loopy Toad asked. About the same level as the headmasters of major cultivation schools. The strong ones are already half a step into true immortal stage, but most of them are itinerant immortals. Furthermore, they basically have no hope of breaking through in their lifetime. Loopy Toad couldn't help laughing when it heard this. It turned out that this was just an itinerant immortal. After all, true immortals were now written about by authors. However, from Warden Liang's tone, he was still worried about this matter. From the attitude of this letter, Heartwarming must have been instructed by someone behind the scenes. Otherwise, a captain like him wouldn't have the guts to do this. What do you think? Right now, Union Commander Heartwarming is standing on the opposite side of us. Even if he is removed from his position and imprisoned, he will still put in all his effort to stop Keon's capture. It seems that the secrets Keon possesses have already touched the cake of some big shot. In our Huashu nation, there are only a handful of people with such power. Warden Liang frowned deeply. The key point was that Battle Sect wasn't a law enforcement organization. If Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal clashed with Songhai City's branch at this time, it would be the branch that would ultimately win. Furthermore, the overall strength of the branches was not weak. Each branch had 20 teams, and even the weakest of them was at the nascent Soul stage. The Office of Strategic Deception had only just been established, and while it looked like it had a lot of people, it had very few elite soldiers. Many of its disciples were Foundation establishment and Golden Core cultivators who did odd jobs. If a conflict really broke out, even if there were a few big shots keeping watch, it would be a self-destructive move. If a light sect dared to make a move against the law enforcement department, they would be able to find a reason to kill them in a matter of minutes. In this era of peace, battles between sects would no longer be the same as before, where disciples would meet in front of the mountain gate to fight if they didn't like each other. A trade war, an information war, and a public opinion war, these were all ways to crush an opponent. If Battle Sect made a move now, and the other sects added fuel to the fire, it would definitely be at an overwhelming disadvantage in terms of public opinion. A tall tree attracts the wind, and there were too many sects that wanted to suppress Battle Sect now. Warden Liang even suspected that this matter might be a plot against Battle Sect. It could even be said that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's Battle Sect had been in the limelight recently. Even if it attached itself to Huashu Alliance's main branch, how could this mountain hold two tigers? The complexity of this matter was already a little beyond Warden Liang's imagination. I'm sorry, Senior Immortal, this matter has already been ordered by the branch. It's not good for me to disobey a superior's order. Unless the main branch sends out a notice, I won't be able to continue to detain Klein. I understand. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. Then how much longer can Warden Liang keep him? Warden Liang was silent for a moment before he replied, the order says to release him immediately, but going by procedure, I can keep him for another hour at most. Then I'll have to trouble you, Warden Liang. The two men cupped their fists and bowed to each other. After that, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal swiftly left the prison with Loopy Toad. As soon as the man and the dog left, Warden Liang immediately ordered a prison guard on the side, go, bring me that 99-question questionnaire on prison satisfaction. Warden, are you really going to help him? What do you mean help? I'm just fulfilling the quota given to me by my superiors. This is also a task assigned by the CHM, who said that the major prisons had to satisfy the prisoners' human rights while they were locked up. I'm just following orders. After saying this, Warden Liang left without looking back. He already felt that this matter was very troublesome. Now, he needed to find someone to sort out his thoughts with. Whenever he felt vexed, he just needed to discuss it with this person, and his mood would immediately become better. Returning to the warden's office, Warden Liang picked up the coffee cup on the table and took a sip, then directly connected to the office of the General Administration of 100 Schools with the communication ball. Hello, I'm Old Liang from Songhai First Prison. Help me connect to your Director Zhua's insider. Although it was already time to get off work, he was well aware that Odd Zhua, this workaholic who risked his life in the workplace, would definitely still stick to his post. At that moment, Warden Liang stroked the communication ball and looked out the window. His intuition told him that all of Huashu Nation, and even the whole world was about to experience a major earthquake. After Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Loopy Toad left the prison, one man and one dog clearly sensed that something wasn't right in the atmosphere, especially when Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal used the Battle Sect transmission token specially issued by Huashu Alliance to contact the main branch. That strange feeling instantly surged into his heart. There was no response from the main branch. No one hung up, no one picked up. This was definitely an abnormal signal. Is no one picking up? Loopy Toad also sensed that something wasn't right. From the moment Klein was captured to the news broadcast on Xinjiang TV, to grenade-throwing senior immortal personally accompanying Warden Liang to investigate the case, to Shanghai City branch asking for Klein's release, the whole process had taken less than 6 hours. Within these 6 hours, there was a pair of invisible hands that could blot out the sky and cover the sun. They had already made arrangements behind the scenes and controlled everything. Who could this person be? Do you have an answer? Without concrete evidence, I can't suspect anyone. Furthermore, there's more than one person with this kind of power. We need to figure out what on earth the other party is hiding, and what secrets Klein has that he can't say. Don't worry about Klein, I've already placed a mark on him, he can't run away, said Loopy Toad. Grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded. Then let's split up. I'll take the nearest immortal warship to the main branch to look for him. You go and get in touch with Brother Zhuo first, and help him gather more people. Aren't you going to look for my little Master Ling? Isn't Brother Ling still doing his homework? Let's settle this first, I don't dare disturb him. Sitting in his office, Zhuo felt a little uneasy. He looked out the office window at the peaceful night sky, and for a moment felt like he could see dark clouds rolling in. After he rubbed his eyes, those dark clouds that had disturbed the tranquility vanished completely like an illusion. 10 minutes ago, he had received an internal call from Warden Liang's communication bowl. Old Liang hadn't left him much, and had only talked about the new prisoner Klein. Old Liang was one of the few friends he could confide in. Although their jobs were very different, they would usually talk to each other about whatever was bothering them. His tone was as calm as usual, and he didn't look the least bit flustered. Yo! Brother Zhuo. Did you see the news about Kian Duncan? I didn't just see it, I also heard some information. Zhuo's tone was the same as usual. He knew that Warden Liang had most likely called him to discuss some gossip about the prisoner. But because Klein, the prisoner they had arrested this time, was somewhat related to his Shifu, Zhuo had especially learned some information through the Office of Strategic Deception's internal channels. I heard this person is from the SBP Foundation. He came to Huaxiu Nation 20 years ago, and has been roaming the country for secret investigations. He even pretended to be the ancestor of the world of killers, Numinous Mother, to earn money for his activities. What a strange person. Zhuo tried hard to recall the information he had read. So far, Battle's sect had only provided this much information, and it was updated practically in real time. When he and Warden Liang had inquired about Klein, Zhuo had especially flipped through Battle's sect's secret intelligence vault, and realized that there were no updates. He immediately knew the purpose of old Liang's call. It was probably because the interrogation hadn't gone well, and old Liang wanted to vent his frustrations. You know a lot, Brother Zhuo. But this is a little unusual. This Klein is different from all the prisoners I've dealt with before. Shanghai First Prison's Mahjong trio is the weirdest of all. Is there anyone more out of line than the three of them? Shi Ba. Brother Zhuo. I'm not joking. Warden Liang almost roared. Zhuo was startled by his sudden seriousness. But very quickly, he received Warden Liang's apology. I apologize, Brother Zhuo, I was a little too agitated. It's fine, Brother Liang, I understand. If you have any difficulties, you can tell me. I might be able to help. Compared with the previous few times they had discussed the strange prisoner, Zhuo finally felt that this time was special. Old Liang had always been a calm and daring person. Rather than saying he was agitated, that roar just now had been to boost his courage. Now, Zhuo was also starting to get curious. How on earth could a foreign cultivator make old Liang lose his composure like this? You and I don't work in the same unit, but when it comes to this prisoner's case, based on my experience, Brother Joie, it's best if you don't interfere. Warden Liang's voice trembled a little as he spoke, perhaps even he himself didn't realize it. Joie didn't want the atmosphere to become even more solemn, so he could only continue to talk in a teasing tone. I have a lot of work here. Brother Liang, are you afraid that I'll interfere and steal your credit? Don't worry, Brother Liang, I promise you that I won't do anything. Warden Liang's voice was clearly silent on the other end of the communication bowl. The call was cut off. At the same time, Joie also sank into a long silence. Old Liang's phone call was very strange. Normally, he wouldn't deliberately add some mood particles in his sentences, such as vulgar words like "shiba." Although they didn't work in the same unit, they usually chatted a lot, and there was always a special tacit understanding between them. Joie started to replay the voice recording in the communication ball and carefully read every word old Liang had said to him. He felt that old Liang might be giving him a hint. Taking out his notebook, Joie recorded everything old Liang had said to him just now. Yo! Brother Joie. You know quite a lot, Brother Joie, Shiba. Brother Joie. I apologize, Brother Joie, you and I don't work in the same unit. When these sentences were put together, Joie really found clues at the beginning of the sentence. When these words were put together in a homophone, they formed the following sentence: I have something for you. Old Liang had left something for him. Joie felt a little bewildered and at the same time a little funny, because this code word was really too lame. But as lame as it was fine as long as it worked. If it wasn't for the fact that he usually chatted with old Liang a lot and knew the latter's habit of using words to form sentences, he really wouldn't have been able to hear the meaning behind these words. Based on the content of the call, old Liang probably had something for him. As Joie waited restlessly in the office for a while, a stream of light flashed in front of him outside the window. With one glance, he recognized it. It was old Liang's personal flying sword. Infinity swords. When the infinity sword stabbed someone, heavy chains would immediately grow out of the wound like weeds, firmly locking the enemy in place. But there seemed to be something very strange on this flying sword, which seemed to be a bundle. Joie reacted quickly. He turned to the side and firmly caught this flying sword as it sped towards him. The moment he caught the sword, the bundle on the hilt tumbled off, and blood instantly gushed out of the bundle to soak the floor. Joie looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. He forcibly restrained his trembling body and used the infinity sword in his hand to pick up the bundle. Inside it was old Liang's head. At the same time, several people in azure uniforms burst into Joie's office. The leader was precisely the team leader of Huaxiao Alliance's Team 1. He stared at Joie, then at Warden Liang's head on the floor, and sneered. Director Joie, the evidence is conclusive that you killed Warden Liang. We are now officially arresting you in the name of Huaxiao Alliance. Chapter 1226. This was the game between almighties. They were like giants who had come ashore and trampled on the calm beach, completely disregarding the lives of the small shrimps at the bottom. Joie had been caught, and this meticulously planned scheme had officially been exposed. Whose instructions did you receive? To the surprise of the team leader of Team 1, Joie didn't resist at all, and obediently put on the spirit shackles. Director Joie, you can only blame yourself for meddling too much in other people's business. We're just following orders. You have no right to know whose instructions we received. The team leader's expression was indifferent as he waved his hand and ordered the others to take Joie away. Team leader, Joie didn't resist at all. Could it be a trap? It can't be. The team leader shook his head confidently. The spirit shackles can restrain all spirit power. If it's just Joie's clone who's being taken away, the clone will automatically disintegrate the moment the handcuffs are put on. At that moment, outside the general administration of 100 schools building in Songhai City, in a van operated by a humanoid loopy toad, Ajwa heaved a long sigh of relief. As expected of Shifu, he actually predicted this. The person being handcuffed was the real clone that Wang Ling had customized for Ajwa remotely. Like Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch, Ajwa's real clone also had spiritual intelligence and was completely no different from a real person. How could a mere spirit shackles break through such a high-level Heaven's Path clone technique? Although Ajwa had been saved by Wang Ling, he still had lingering fears. Because Warden Liang really was dead. Although Ajwa hadn't seen it with his own eyes, the real clone shared memories. When he saw Warden Liang's head roll at his feet, it was as if he had experienced it himself, and he felt the pain in his heart. Don't worry too much. Once everything is over, little Master Ling will find a way. But given the current situation, someone has to die for the whole thing to be more real. We have to make the mastermind believe that he's carrying out his plan step by step, only then will we have a chance to ferret him out. Loopy Toad skillfully drove the car away from the scene with Ajwa. It had learned this skill from Wei Ji when he had been driving around the blue circle in the game, and didn't have a driver's license yet. But in order to save Ajwa, Loopy Toad couldn't care less. I understand, I trust Shifu completely. It was just that this matter was too sudden. What kind of secret does this Clean have that's worth that pusher doing this? In the front passenger seat, Ajwa was puzzled no matter how he thought about it. Maybe the answer is here. Loopy Toad casually tossed him a brocade pouch. This was in fact the last message Warden Liang had left for Ajwa. In order to get this message out, Warden Liang had sent out several spirit swords. He knew that his message could be intercepted, so he used the infinity sword he was wearing as bait and prepared another spirit sword to deliver the message to Loopy Toad. After opening the brocade pouch, he found a strange list. SBP Foundation's name list. Why does old Liang have it? Yes. I've seen it before, but I don't understand what it means. There were 7 numbers on the list, which corresponded to 7 tarot cards: Moon, Star, Sun, Judgment, Chariot, Fate and the Fool. It seems that Huaxiao Alliance has long been aware of the SBP Foundation, but their internal opinions on this foundation aren't unified, which is why today's incident happened. And this Clean might be the key to everything, Ajwa said as he stared at the list. This was all just speculation, and so far, he didn't have any proof. Furthermore, the message Warden Liang had left him was really too vague. The only thing Ajwa could glean from it was that behind the SBP Foundation, there might be 7 big shots who represented these 7 tarot cards. But who these 7 people were on Earth was still a mystery. Where are we going now? When we get to Wei Ji's house, we have to gather our people first. Senior Immortal is already on his way to Jinghua City. He wants to go to HQ to see what's going on. Won't he be intercepted? Senior Immortal just gave me a new message. He said that a mysterious person helped him change his identity and smoothly passed the security check at the shipyard. Mysterious person, Ajwa rubbed his chin as he muttered in his heart. This means that behind this matter, there are 2 forces that are fighting against each other. No, there are 3 forces. Loopy Toad said, we're the third. After successfully arriving at the staff apartment where Wei Ji lived, the first thing Ajwa did was turn on the news channel. After skimming through it, he realized that the news of his arrest hadn't been announced yet, and he breathed a slight sigh of relief in his heart. For them, the news of your arrest is just a pawn in a game of chess. They won't announce it unless it's absolutely necessary, Wang Jin said. The people in the apartment had already roughly understood the ins and outs of the incident while Loopy Toad and Ajwa were still on the way. At that moment, Wang Jin, Lu Qingyi, Gu Xuanji, Jin Yuan, Li Huanran and Wei Ji were all here. Loopy Toad looked around carefully and didn't see any trace of Jiang Yingyue. Where's the founder of Shadow Stream? She's in seclusion in the bathroom, Lu Qingyi replied. She's been like this since the news about Cleon came out. It doesn't feel good to be deceived by a big shot in drag. I actually quite understand. Skipping over the topic of Jiang Yingyue, Odd still felt like his mind was in a fog. I don't understand why they captured me. You were very close to Battle's sect, so it was probably to restrain Battle's sect. It's just that they didn't expect us to protect the real you. Everyone sat cross-legged on the carpet in a circle as they started to analyze the situation in front of them. There are at least two forces secretly competing inside Huaxiao Alliance, but I feel like we're missing something, Ojua said. Even if Cleon is from the SBP Foundation, he's just a foreigner. In theory, there's no conflict of interest involved. Huaxiao Alliance also has no reason to protect him. We'll talk about this later. Let's first analyze the information that Warden Liang left behind. Gu Xuanji also felt that this matter was a little interesting. When Odd-Chua showed them the identity information of the 7 tarot cards that Warden Liang had left behind, Gu Xuanji felt that the whole thing had become even more interesting. What are you laughing at? Right now, it's possible that we're the only forces in this mess on paper, and the others don't know each other's identities behind the scenes. Don't you think it's a little like playing werewolf? Gu Xuanji said, if these 7 cards symbolize the 7 people behind the SBP Foundation, then why do they call each other by their code names? Doesn't this mean that they also don't know each other's identities? You mean? Everyone looked at Gu Xuanji as if they understood, but not quite. The way to break out of this situation is actually very simple. We just need to ferret out one of these 7 people, and then make a bold move. At that time, all the things hidden in the deep water will surface. Chapter 12:27. After listening to Gu Xuanji's analysis, everyone nodded. In the end, a keeper of order was a keeper of order. It looked like there was a reason why the Heavenly Tao had taken a liking to Gu Xuanji. To be able to resolve the mystery with just a few words was probably the accumulated experience of a keeper of order who intervened in disputes between various races in the universe all year round and was responsible for mediating. But it was clear that these deductions alone weren't enough to deduce the identity of the person behind the scenes. If we're going to pretend to be one of them and make the jump, we have to at least confirm the identity of one of the 7 ID cards. Wang Zhen folded his arms as he stared at the list on the ground, feeling completely clueless about what to do. Although the cultivation civilization on Earth wasn't as developed as that of the domain of the gods, Wang Zhen felt that he had come to the right place for being trapped on Earth by the Heavenly Tao this time. Where there were people, there were disputes, and the disputes on Earth weren't any less than in the domain of the gods. Although Wang Zhen had felt a little aggrieved when he had first been trapped here, after getting used to life here, he even started to like life on Earth a little. Studying with Ling Zhenren was indeed a very happy thing. What did Ling Zhenren say? Wang Zhen asked at that moment. Little Master is still doing homework. Loopy Toad couldn't help looking at Wang Zhen, Gu Xuanji, and the other people from the domain of the gods. By the way, have you finished your homework? No. Wang Zhen shook his head. Loopy Toad, then why are you so calm? At that moment, Wang Zhen looked at Gu Xuanji. Old Gu hired someone from number 60 high to send us the answers to all the homework via DingTalk at exactly 2:00 every day. He just copied them. Loopy Toad took a deep breath and couldn't help frowning. This learning attitude was too bad. But it wasn't that it couldn't understand. Earth's cultural knowledge was very easy for these bigwigs from the domain of the gods. Given Gu Xuanji's IQ, he might have developed solutions that hadn't been developed on Earth yet. If they answered the questions based on their habitual thinking, their true identities might be exposed. So in this situation, Gu Xuanji had chosen to hire someone to do the homework, and then copied it himself. Copying homework was the easiest thing to do. Gu Xuanji had learned this skill from Super Chen and Dopigua, these two wily old foxes who worked from dawn to dusk to copy homework, after coming to Earth. Of course, only Gu Xuanji would spend money to hire people. He was a keeper of order, and his salary was paid by the heavenly Tao. Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi also basked in the limelight. After being baptized into poverty, they had become very sensitive to all kinds of expenses. If one did not know their true identities, who would have thought that these two people were the Wang clan's young master and the Lu clan's young miss? At this time, the few of them stared at the list on the ground and fell into deep thought. Although they already had Gu Xuanji's deductions, they still had no idea what to do next. But Zhua had a feeling that old Liang had left him more clues than that. At this moment, Li Huanran said, "Can I have a look at this list?" "What did you find?" He could clearly sense that Li Huanran's body couldn't help trembling when he took the paper. This was just an ordinary piece of paper, but it could actually frighten Li Huanran to this extent. "I'm sorry. I forgot myself." Li Huanran suppressed the fear in his heart. He held the paper in his hand for a long time, his body trembling. In less than a minute, he let go of the paper. As the paper fell to the ground, Li Huanran looked as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. "What on earth is going on?" he asked. "Everything is as I guessed." "There's that smell on this paper," said Li Huanran. "Everyone should know that I once wanted to open the void gate by force. What does this have to do with anything? Although I didn't break through the void gate at the time, the truth was that I opened a tiny, invisible crack. I can now sense the same smell on this paper as the void gate." Hearing this, everyone suddenly understood, and Zhua also looked surprised. If this was the case, then it seemed that they had found the epicenter of the incident. There was no doubt that it was the void gate. As for why Li Huanran couldn't help trembling all over when he took the list, this was probably a symptom of post-traumatic stress reaction. Back then, when Li Huanran had tried to break through the void gate in an attempt to find his father but had failed, the fear of facing death had probably been carved into the depths of his soul. "When you broke through the gate back then, what on earth did you sense and see?" "It was probably a kind of spirit. I could sense an invisible spirit wrapped around me like a glutton. There were so many of them that they were like locusts. They swarmed around me, wrapped me up, and then started to devour, bite, and tear my body apart." Everyone shuddered at Li Huanran's words. "Then let's call this creature a hollow spirit for the time being." At this point, Zhua finally saw a clue as to what was going on. He turned to Gu Xuanji. "Does Senior Gu know anything about the void gate?" As a keeper of order, Gu Xuanji danced back and forth between the 10 universes all year round, so it went without saying that he was very knowledgeable. Now that there was a clue as to what was going on, Zhua's first thought was to get some information from Gu Xuanji. Unfortunately, Gu Xuanji shrugged his shoulders. "It's a pity. This void gate isn't part of Tao and isn't under the jurisdiction of heavenly Tao. As a keeper of order, I'm useless. There are actually things in the world that keepers of order don't know about." Zhua said. To put it bluntly, keepers of order are just envoys sent out by heavenly Tao to do odd jobs. The universe is vast, and there are many things that aren't part of Tao. As keepers of order, we can only watch from afar and can't intervene. Otherwise, we'd be breaking the rules. Gu Xuanji smiled bitterly. "But thanks to little friendly Huanran, we finally have some clues as to what's going on. From Li Daoist's description, there should be some powerful creature behind this void gate that surpasses cultivators on Earth. If my guess is correct, I'm afraid that Qion's purpose in coming to Huaxiao 20 years ago was to investigate the void gate. The void gate has only appeared twice in history. The first time was when Li Daoist's father, Martial Dao Master Li Shaokai, challenged and broke through it. Unfortunately, Master Li was only able to open a crack for less than half a fist before he was swallowed up. The second time was when Li Daoist opened the void gate a second time in search of his father. 2 void gates, what does that mean? I remember a famous scientist on Earth once said that humans should never try to have an equal conversation with a high-level civilization. At the same time, we don't respond to all signals sent out by high-level civilizations. There is a chain of contempt between high-level civilizations and low-level civilizations. For example, the creatures inside the Void Gate may or may not be interested in Earth at all, so both sides have always coexisted peacefully. But I'm guessing that this peaceful coexistence was already broken when the Daoist broke through the Void Gate a second time. Gu Xuanji's voice gradually turned gloomy. If these hollow spirits inside the Void Gate start to show interest in Earth, I'm afraid it'll be a disaster for human cultivators. Do you have any proof? Wang Zhen asked at that moment. Of course. Gu Xuanji picked up the list. The answer is in the list that Warden Liang left for us. Gu Xuanji gently caressed every name on the list. At the same time, he diverted his attention to observe Li Huanran's reaction. Li Huanran was now like a reaction vessel. He had a natural sensitivity to the smell inside the void door. When Gu Xuanji's finger touched the word judgment, he saw Li Huanran's entire body start to tremble uncontrollably. It's him, Gu Xuanji said. Gu Xuanji said, it turns out that there are already high-level creatures from the Void Gate who have infiltrated Earth. If my speculation is correct, this person with the code name Judgment is from the Void Gate. Chapter 12:28. With Gu Xuanji's general idea in mind, the focus of the discussion was very clear. Based on the premise that Earth was being invaded by the high-level living beings of the Void Gate, hollow spirits, everyone called this a void invasion. The question then unfolded. When did the hollow begin to invade Earth? What was the hollow's mode of invasion? What was the hollow's ultimate goal? Finally, and most importantly, from the clues provided by Warden Liang, they knew that the person codenamed Judgment at the SBP Foundation might be a spy from the void. So what on earth were they waiting for? If the living beings of a high-level plane are interested in a low-level plane, their ultimate goal is definitely to invade and occupy territory or destroy low-level living beings for fun. But if this Judgment is already a hollow spirit, then they definitely have another purpose for not making a move. Maybe they're looking for something. Gu Xuanji looked at the time. It was almost 10 o'clock, so he got up from his cross-legged position. Sorry, everyone, I have to go copy homework. Loopy Toad, as the keeper of order, you're not going to do anything. Gu Xuanji, I can only give you further hints, but I can't intervene. The Void Gate isn't part of Tao to begin with, so I don't have the right to act as I please unless I get permission from the Heavenly Tao. But so far, the Heavenly Tao hasn't given me any orders, but I can still provide you with some analysis within my capabilities. However, I can still provide you with some analysis within my capabilities. If you find any new clues, you can come and talk to me. Odd Chua and Loopy Toad. Although keepers of order had their own rules, Loopy Toad felt that the Heavenly Tao's process was too rigid. Why did they have to wait until the enemy came knocking on their door with cannons before they were dispatched to maintain the peace of the universe? Loopy Toad didn't quite understand this. Senior Gu has his own way of thinking, but of course we can't rule out another possibility, Odd Chua said at that moment. What's that? The others asked. I remember Shifu once told me that the Heavenly Tao has its own way of judging crisis. If it thinks that these hollow spirits aren't too much of a threat, it won't make a move. Speaking up to this point, Odd Chua smiled bitterly. Actually, that's true. After all, isn't my Shifu still on Earth? I wonder how many blows the living beings behind this gate can exchange with my Shifu. Hearing this, everyone was silent, because that was the truth. What should we do next? Loopy Toad asked at that moment. Odd Chua quietly curled his lips. After sorting out his thoughts, his nervous mood lightened. Keon isn't willing to say anything because he thinks the news won't leak if he keeps quiet. But thanks to Senior Gu, we now have some clues. Perhaps we can use this information to pry open Keon's mouth. After that, Chua swiftly formulated a plan based on the clues in front of him. Senior Wang Jin, Senior Lu Qingyi, go support Senior Immortal. If nothing unexpected happens, Senior Immortal will probably run into a wall in Beijing. No problem. The two nodded. Chua was a little surprised that he had agreed so quickly. He felt that after coming back from the national competition this time, their relationship seemed to have eased up a lot and wasn't as incompatible as before. Senior Jin Yuan, please follow me. No problem. Immortal Jin Yuan had been sitting obediently the whole time, his fiery red long hair fluttering in the wind along with his surging aura. He was excited. Chua then turned his gaze to Wei Ji. Senior Li Huanran and Senior Jiang Yingyue, who's in seclusion in the washroom, are both important witnesses. I'll have to trouble Brother Wei Ji to keep an eye on them for the time being. It's fine. Wei Ji shook his head. Immortal Jin Yuan had already set up a restriction in this apartment which was specially designed to deal with external intrusions and Jiang Yingyue. As long as Jiang Yingyue showed any intention to escape or attack, the restriction would immediately activate and crush her to the ground like a pancake. Jiang Yingyue had tried it once before, and her personal evaluation was that her chest hurt from being crushed, as if the silicone inside had almost burst. She didn't dare try it a second time. After assigning tasks, Loopy Toad was the only one left. Go look for Immortal Toya and Silian Jinren, Chua said at that moment. Why are you looking for them? I need to know how the hollow spirits invade. From Senior Gu's deduction, it's very likely that they're attached to a person's body. Since they're attached to a person's body, maybe there's a rejection reaction. Of course, this is just my guess. Senior Immortal Toya has a lot of medical information at his disposal, so he might know some clues. I understand. Loopy Toad nodded. They had split into 3 groups, and everything was within Chua's plans. Although his realm was low, he had always been able to see the big picture. This was also an important reason why he had taken a liking to him and accepted him as his disciple. Furthermore, Chua had always been a person who dared to take responsibility for his actions, and wasn't afraid of being made a scapegoat. Just as everyone was about to set off, Chua suddenly spoke to Li Huanran. Wait, there's something else. What is it? Li Huanran asked. I have a feeling that you might be one of the focal points of this incident, Senior Li. It's very likely that someone will make a move on you while we're gone, but Senior Jin Yuan has set up a restriction here, so most people can't get in, Wei Ji said. But we can't rule out the possibility that if the hollow spirits come looking for you, they might have some special methods, right? Speaking up to this point, Chua took out a pair of long johns from his storage bag. This is for you, Senior Li. My Shifu left this for me. I have another set here, and this is a spare. Put it on first, just in case. This is... Li Huanran held the long johns with a bewildered look on his face. This is Earth, no, perhaps the most powerful armor in the universe. At that moment, Jin Yuan couldn't help sighing on the side. At 22:15, Wang Ling put his homework on hold. He took a shower and changed into his big white bunny pajamas, and at the same time kept an eye on Chua's situation from a distance. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had rushed to Jinghua City alone. Although it was dangerous, Wang Ling felt that it shouldn't be a problem. He still had his king's eye, which was enough to deal with the current predicament. Hollow spirits. Earlier, Wang Ling had asked the Sun Spirit what on earth was behind the Gate of the Void. The Sun Spirit had told him that there was nothing behind the Gate of the Void. Until now, Wang Ling still hadn't understood what this meant. Then, Wang Ling took out the omniscient phenomenon pillar, which Wang Ying had used previously from his pencil case. This pillar had already shrunk to the size of a needle. This was a void object, and Wang Ling had been looking for a suitable opportunity to send it back. Now, he felt that the opportunity had come. Since the other party had invaded through the void, he had to return the favor. Thinking this, Wang Ling used his other king's eye to carve a Heavenly Dao poem that was widely circulated in Heavenly Dao on the omniscient phenomenon pillar. What year is a dream? 3,000 transformations while sitting on the ground. The heart is connected to the whole universe. Even without Dao, one can become an immortal. After that, Wang Ling's mind stirred, and he located the gate of the void. He then opened the window and flicked his fingers to send the omniscient phenomenon pillar out. Chapter 1229. Audrey used a face-molding pill on the market to give himself a simple makeover. After taking this pill, his face would be adjusted within half an hour, and his facial features would become as soft as plasticine. However, it was clear that Audrey's face-molding skills weren't very good. He did it in Wei Ji's house, and after he was done, he couldn't help sighing. AI. So ugly. But it's already effective. Leaning against the door, Immortal Jin Yuan scrutinized Audrey in the mirror with a very immortal smile. I've embarrassed myself in front of Senior Jin Yuan. Audrey scratched his head in embarrassment. In any case, he was only doing the face molding for the mission. There was nothing he could do if his skills were too poor. You look like a web novelist now. There can't be an uglier novelist than this, right? Kushwan. After everything was ready, the two of them went to the underground parking lot of the staff apartment and walked up to a white Wuling Hongguang. This was Wei Ji's car and had been specially modified by him. There was a lot of room inside for dozens of large spirit beasts, and it was an essential tool for Wei Ji's family. Now, Audrey had urgently requisitioned it. Wei Ji wasn't worried at all that the car would be damaged. Battle Sect was rich. Even if it was damaged, they would compensate him, and would definitely give him a better one. This car is very sturdy. Jin Yuan touched the white Wuling Hongguang van and found that it was made of armor, the same material used on air immortal warships. It was light and sturdy. Coupled with the magic coating on the outside, it could even withstand a few waves of spirit power missiles. Get in, Audrey shouted and took the initiative to sit in the driver's seat. As the car drove out, Audrey saw a familiar old man. This person was none other than Marshal Jiang. Not good, Audrey felt that they might be in trouble. As the van drove through the gate, sure enough, Marshal Jiang stopped them. Old man Jiang, who was wearing a vest and waving a palm leaf fan in his hand, looked at Audrey in disguise. Parking fee, 5 yuan. Audrey was blank. Parking fee, 5 yuan. Hurry up, don't waste so much time. Old man Jiang was a little impatient. Are you little Ji's friends? Why haven't I seen you before? I came to visit out of the blue. Audrey pretended to be calm as he handed over a 5 yuan note. Alright, let's go. Grandpa Jiang took the money and threw it into a worn-out iron box. Then, he pressed the remote control in his hand and opened the gate. Be careful when you go out. Audrey sensed that there seemed to be a hidden meaning behind these words, but he didn't dare stay any longer. He stepped on the accelerator and drove the car up the slope. Old Master Jiang smiled as he watched the van drive away. At this moment, beside the metal box filled with change, the old man who had not hung up the phone let out a hearty laugh. Ha ha ha, I knew this kid would be fine. Dakong, are you relieved now? He's my chosen successor, so I have to show some concern for him. On the other end of the line, Secretary Dakong laughed. This kid always brings me some surprises. His clone actually managed to fool even the spirit shackles. So, is there any progress on this matter? It's blown up a little. Although it hasn't reached the point where it's impossible to recover from what's done, it's bound to be very chaotic in the next few days, Marshal Jiang said as he waved his palm leaf fan. The head of state already suspects the mastermind behind this, but it's better to bide our time for now. Does the head of state suspect that one of the 10 of us has already been invaded by a hollow spirit? Yes. What on earth is this thing? Marshal Jiang felt a headache coming on. I don't know, but I can say for sure that it's not easy to deal with. You also have to be careful, old Jiang. It seems to have a special way of not only attaching itself to you, but also spreading it. Leaving the staff apartment, Audrey still had lingering fears about what had just happened at the gate. Why do I feel like I've been discovered? Yes, but that little friend didn't directly expose you, Immortal Jinyuan said with a smile in the front passenger seat. Little friend, thousands of years ago, when this old grandpa was a child, I had a fight with him. He cried and shouted that he wanted revenge. He's probably forgotten about it now. Audrey was astonished as he thought that Immortal Jinyuan was indeed worthy of being called a legendary cultivator on Earth and the man who had created the gate between worlds. He had even seen the 10 generals when they were children. This cultivation was probably at least 10,000 years old. At that moment, Audrey's imagination suddenly ran wild. If his Shifu also had 10,000 years of experience, how terrifying would he be? After all, he was only 16 years old right now. Driving at top speed, Audrey finally stopped not far from a toll booth on the outskirts of Songhai City. Jinyuan instantly understood what Audrey was thinking. This person was probably trying to intercept him. Earlier, Battle Sect's intelligence department sent word that Keon has already been sent out of Songhai No. 1 prison and will be transferred to Jinghua City. Choosing a vehicle. The other party is very cunning. They've chosen multiple routes and dispatched multiple surveillance vehicles. According to the intelligence department's calculations, the probability of this route being the correct one is as high as 70%. What if we make a mistake? Then we can only leave it to Senior Immortal and the others. Audrey sighed softly, his eyes fixed closely on the ETC passage at the toll booth. About 10 minutes later, sure enough, a modified black and white surveillance vehicle drove through the passage. He's indeed in the car. Immortal Jinyuan made his judgment from a distance. His perception was extremely strong, and even though the surveillance vehicle was heavily guarded, he could still smell Keon on it. Although he had never seen Keon before, he knew that he was a foreigner who had been locked up in prison for so long that he hadn't had time to wear cologne to cover it up, so the stench on him was very obvious. Get ready, Senior Jinyuan. Audrey's spirit was extremely focused. Just as the two of them were about to make a move, several figures dashed out from the green belt on the side. This group of people was dressed in pitch-black night clothes, as if they had been lying low here for a very long time. There were 6 of them in total. The moment the surveillance vehicle passed by, these 6 people attacked at the same time. Their feet kicked away flying swords, and the moment they appeared, they launched a concentrated attack on the surveillance vehicle. It looks like we're not the only ones who want to kidnap them. Jinyuan put a hand on Audrey's shoulder. Don't move, fellow Daoist Zhua, let's wait and see first. He seemed to have long since anticipated that there would be other people intercepting them, and his expression was extremely indifferent. Sure enough, as soon as he said this, the manhole covers on both sides of the road were suddenly lifted off, and a second group of people scuttled out. They were also dressed in night clothes and covered themselves very tightly. From a distance, Jinyuan could smell the strong scent of herbs on this group of people, who seemed to be engaged in alchemy all year round. 2 groups of people. Audrey was astonished. Including them, there were already 3 groups of people. Immortal Jinyuan shook his head, his face expressionless. No, there's still one more. Then, Audrey saw several well-built figures descend from the sky like heavenly soldiers as they abruptly dropped in the middle of the road. So many people. The corners of Audrey's mouth twitched. But looking at this lineup, it was already enough to see how critical Keon was. No matter what this person said, they had to take him down. Don't worry, fellow Daoist. Just watch me perform. At that moment, Immortal Jin Yuan smiled slightly and narrowed his eyes as he gazed at the battlefield in front of him. Then, all of you, get down. As soon as he said this, Zhuo heard a boom. The ground in front of the toll booth abruptly cracked and the road caved in deeply. More than 40 people in total had come out of the 3 groups of people, but all of them lay flat on the ground like toads, unable to move. Their faces were hideous and twisted, and their entire faces were pressed into the ground as they wailed in pain. Zhuo thought that he had seen a lot of big scenes, but he was still dumbfounded by Immortal Jin Yuan's big move, and his mouth dropped open. It's definitely a far cry from Ling Jinyuan's. This is just a small, insignificant scene, it's just a directional gravitational suppression. Hurry up and pick it up, fellow Daoist Zhuo. Immortal Jinyuan patted Zhuo on the shoulder. Chapter 1230. In the end, Immortal Jin Yuan one-sidedly crushed the competition between several parties. Zhuo used his spirit sword to break open the door of the inspection van. When he saw that Cowan had already fainted, he didn't think too much about it as he directly picked him up and sprinted 100 meters. He opened the back of the Wuling Hongguang and threw the man inside before driving away as fast as he could. Things had progressed more smoothly than Zhuo had imagined. His next step was to drive to Battle Sect, whose mountain gate was outside Songhai City. At the moment, Battle Sect was a relatively safe place. Even if someone wanted to pay a visit, it wouldn't be that easy. Zhuo had already decided to pry open Cowan's mouth before anyone tracked him down. Zhuo walked for about 5 or 6 minutes before the gravity suppression Immortal Jin Yuan had set up in front of the toll station was unlocked. With the power of a venerated immortal, you could do whatever you wanted. The 3 groups of people got up from the ground one after another. Their faces were plastered with gravel and some of them had blood stains on them. All of them were covered in dirt, and felt a little dizzy. Being suppressed by gravity for a long time would block blood flow, so the first thing they felt after getting up was numbness in their legs. More than 40 people got up from the ground, all of them wearing night clothes. Unable to tell friend from foe in the dazzling divine pool, they directly circled the inspection van. Who the hell are you? Who are you? The 3 groups of people asked each other questions as they took out the magic weapons in their hands and threatened each other. Although they were all speaking Mandarin, it was clear that they had different accents, which made the scene even more chaotic. Everyone, the person we wanted to rob was snatched away by the other group. If we start an internal strife now, won't the 4th group laugh at us? The representative of one group suddenly said at that moment. That's right. Brothers, I also think it's inappropriate for us to stand here, and the police will be here soon. There's no harm in the 3 of us chasing after them, it'll depend on our own abilities. All right. Then shall we retreat? How? Go back to where you came from. The 40 or so people hit it off and scattered in the direction of the previous ambush. The person they wanted to rob had been snatched away by someone else. Since they didn't know the other party's background, these groups of people said they were going to chase after them, but in fact, they still had to ask for instructions before taking action. After the failure of the operation, the burly men in black who had fallen from the sky were quickly picked up by an armed helicopter. A group of people discussed the follow-up plan on the helicopter. The leader of the team took off his mask, revealing his face. Just like Keon, he was a Western cultivator. He had dark blue eyes, a high nose bridge, and long sideburns. He was assimilating with a communication bowl. They were from the SBP Foundation. The team leader spoke to judgment in fluent Mandarin. They were all capable operatives of the SBP Foundation in Huaxiu Nation. Lord Judge, I'm very sorry. The operation has failed. There were a total of 3 groups of people who snatched it from us. Snake deserves to die. I already know about this. It's not your fault. The black shadow on the other end of the communication ball said, furthermore, I already know that of the three groups, one is from Huagua Water Curtain Group, one is from Huashio Alliance General Alliance, and the last one might be from Battle Sect. The War Sect actually has such a powerful expert? Snake's heart trembled. Don't panic, I will immediately send someone to support you. You just need to follow the instructions I'll give you later and wait at the designated coordinates. Yes. Snake nodded. At this point, the call between the two of them was cut off. On the edge of a cliff in Mishio Nation's lonely forest, in front of an ancient castle bathed in moonlight, the black-cloaked owner of the castle stood on the edge of the cliff and slowly stretched out his arms to embrace the moon, praying devoutly to the great void in the name of judgment. Great Lord of the Void. Thank the Lord for your salvation. I beseech the Lord to save the people of the void and restart the void. We, the people of the void who are lurking here, will surely offer the Lord our most sincere gift of life. After the prayer, the owner of the cloak returned to the castle. The old woman standing silently by the door took off the owner's cloak and hung it on a hanger. The owner of the castle finally revealed his deathly pale face, devoid of all blood. In front of a gorgeous long dining table, two tall candlesticks gave off light, and the old woman pushed a dining cart. Lord Bai, the tonic is ready. Please enjoy. The young man coughed. He scooped up a spoonful of red medicinal soup and leaned close to savor its aroma. It was as if that wonderful feeling could make him forget all his troubles for a short period of time, forget his past, and even for a moment, forget that young man whom he hated to the core. For countless nights, that pair of dead fish eyes had been tormenting him like a nightmare. Before drinking the soup, the young man glanced at the old woman out of the corner of his eye. My name is Su Bai, and I am a citizen of the void. The Baiju of the past has nothing to do with me anymore. Yes, this old servant will remember. Only then did the old woman realize that she had made a slip of the tongue. After bowing, she hurriedly pushed the dining cart away. As the young man had said, the great void had given him a third life, which had been given to him by a white-haired young man whose face couldn't be seen clearly. Unfortunately, that young man hadn't put him in an important position. He had once been a lord, but after he was resurrected, Baiju realized that he was worse than a dog. In extreme grief and indignation, Baiju chose to end his life. His third life had been bestowed upon him by the void. The void had given him everything he wanted, and had even helped him advance into a higher life form called a hollow spirit. In the days that followed, he began to look for a host. Then, this Mr. Judgment of the SBP Foundation became the perfect host for him. As his hollow spirit body began to merge with Judgment, he took away everything that belonged to Judgment. Memories, realm, wealth, reputation. With the help of the void, he had regained all of these things that he had once lost. At that moment, he had changed his name to Su Bai. He was a devout citizen of the void. Furthermore, he was a higher life form than human cultivators. With the nourishment of the medicinal soup, it wouldn't take him more than a few days to completely adapt to Judgment's body. He was now confident that he could kill Wang Ling. But he didn't want to be in such a hurry. Letting a person die wasn't the greatest torture. The greatest torture was to make a person lose all the things they wanted. Su Bai had thought it through very thoroughly. What he wanted to take away was the peaceful life that Wang Ling yearned for the most. Wang Ling, what are you going to do? The young man put spoonful after spoonful of the red medicinal soup into his mouth and sneered. He had already finished praying in the darkness of the night. The great Lord of the Void was going to reopen the Void Gate and test the human world once again. P.S. Poll. Please guess how many slaps Wang Ling can take from Su Bai. A. 1-3B, 3-5C, 6-10. Chapter 1231. For a long time, people have been pursuing higher levels of evolution. This is also the reason why cultivators have been pursuing higher levels of cultivation. Countless cultivators pursue higher realms for strength, for longevity, and even more so for the pursuit of a higher form of life. Inside the battle sect, Kun was holding a cup of hot coffee as he explained the situation that he knew. It seemed that he was going to talk about the origin of human beings and cultivation. But time was of the essence now, so Audra could only guide Keon from the side and let him choose the key points to answer. In order to win Keon's trust, Audra had even unlocked Keon's spirit shackles. But Keon knew very well that with that long-haired almighty here, it didn't make any difference whether he wore the shackles or not. You didn't want to say anything before, why are you willing to say it now? Audra was puzzled by Keon's sudden change. Keon looked at Audra. The reason I joined the SBP Foundation was to help the human world develop more peacefully and orderly. The investigations I've conducted over the past few years have been based on this goal as well. I will only choose what I think is right. In fact, I was still hesitating when I was sent to the prison van, but after a few rounds of fighting, I immediately understood. What do you understand? I understand. It's the right direction. Keon's voice gradually became deeper. The Foundation has changed. It's no longer the Foundation I used to know. We exist to expose the truth. Now, in order to hide the truth, the Foundation is willing to pay the price of killing an investigator. You mean that the burly men from the Foundation weren't here to kidnap you? Despite their disguises, I know them too. They are the Foundation's scavengers. The duty of the scavengers is to assist in the investigation. They will cooperate with the investigators to carry out specific tasks. For example, sometimes we need to kidnap a specific insider in order to investigate something. At the same time, in order to protect the identity of the insider, we will fake their suicide so that we can take the real person away for investigation. In this way, in the eyes of the outside world, this person was already dead. But in fact, once we have enough evidence, this dead person will come back as a key witness. So, the scavenger's mission was to help you fake a suicide. You can think of it that way. Keon nodded. Holding his coffee cup, he laughed bitterly. But I don't know when the scavengers started to change. The Foundation, which originally exposed the truth, became the lackeys of some tycoons. They sent investigators to gather all the evidence and witnesses, and then sent the scavengers to destroy them all. Truly flawless. Audra scared inside. When did they become like this, and when they became like this? A long time ago. In my memory, it seemed to have started 20 years ago. They had already started to rot 20 years ago. It's just that I didn't have any concrete evidence. Keon frowned as if he was trying hard to recall the details of the past few decades. From the moment my first friend who was also an investigator died, I already had my suspicions. Time. Scavenger. Time. Speaking up to this point, Keon lowered his head and cast a simple impression spell to project the appearance of a blue-eyed foreigner on paper. This man is called Snake, the leader of the scavengers. Maybe even he doesn't know, but I've been paying attention to him ever since my first investigator companion died. The moment he jumped out just now, I could clearly sense that he wanted to kill me. He's very strong. Your realm isn't too bad without the spirit shackles, right? Audra said. We're all elite selected and cultivated by the Foundation. Our realms aren't much different, but the focus of our cultivation is different. Scavengers are killing machines cultivated by the Foundation. As for us investigators, most of our focus is on cultivating perception type and support type spells. At this point, Audra already had a general idea of what had happened. Back in Songhai First Prison, Keon had refused to give in no matter what because he still had a glimmer of hope in the existence of the SBP Foundation. He firmly believed that the faith he had once firmly believed in wouldn't collapse so easily, but after killing 4 people halfway through, Keon instantly understood that the incomparably lofty foundation in his heart had already been completely destroyed. I chose your battle sect because you don't have any interest in the foundation. Do you remember the other 2 people who intercepted us? You mean Huagua Water Curtain Group and the Central Alliance? If my inference is correct, they've probably already been infiltrated by the Foundation. Compare them. Only Battle Sect is at a lower risk, Keon said. Hearing this, Audra felt that the situation, which had already become clear, seemed to have become a little complicated again. The SBP Foundation has been established for so many years and enjoys a good reputation internationally. I can understand why the Central Alliance might be working with it, but what's going on with Huagua Water Curtain Group? Audra asked. I'm not particularly clear on this matter. I only heard a colleague mention files related to Huagua Water Curtain Group. It seems to have something to do with that female candidate for Huagua Water Curtain Group. Lotus Sun. Yes, that should be the name, but I don't know the specifics of the investigation. The expression on Keon's face was particularly complicated. Because the rumor is that this investigator also died at the hands of the scavengers, boom. At that moment, as they were talking, a huge explosion suddenly erupted outside Battle Sect's mountain gate. Grenade-throwing senior immortals True Venerate Hall also shook slightly with this huge tremor. Report a group of foreigners are preparing to attack the mountain. A Battle Sect disciple ran in a panic. It's the scavengers. Snake and the others are here. Keon became nervous. They clearly know that you have an expert keeping watch here, and won't act rashly unless they're fully prepared. Snake is very strong. He's definitely going to kill me. Don't panic. Audra tried to calm Keon down. He exchanged glances with Immortal Jin Yuan, who was about to go out and take a look at the situation. In the end, another Battle Sect disciple ran in a panic at that moment. Report the leader of the foreigners is dead. Dead? Audra was stupefied. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch said it was a needle that came from afar like a shooting star and directly stabbed him to death, then flew off into the distance. Hearing this, Audra sucked in a cold breath. Were the villains nowadays so shameless? They didn't even have a chance to make an appearance and had died just like that. Chapter 1232. About 5 minutes ago, a group of foreigners had gathered outside Battle Sect's mountain gate. Their leader was none other than Snake, who was known as the SBP Foundation Scavenger Team Leader. In less than 2 hours, he had arrived at the location Su Bai had specified and obtained a magic treasure known as the Void Magic Ball. Then, he had come here according to new instructions. Snake didn't know what this Lord Judgment wanted to do, but there was nothing wrong with following the Foundation's arrangements. A group of outsiders gathering in front of the mountain gate was definitely a sign of danger. Seeing this, the Battle Sect disciples in the Sentry Tower hurriedly reported the situation to their superiors. Very quickly, a stream of golden light rose from the heart of Battle Sect and descended from the sky in front of this group of scavengers. The powerful aura made the scavengers involuntarily take a few steps back. Snake stared at the young-looking boy in front of him with his dark blue eyes set in deeply sunken eye sockets. We are here on the orders of the SBP Foundation. Please ask the person in charge of your sect to come out and return him to us. After saying this, Snake also tried to recall the origins of the person in front of him in his mind, but he found that he had no impression at all in his mind. Crispy Noodles didn't reply, and just stared quietly at Snake. According to Battle Sect's rules, anyone who provoked the mountain gate, Battle Sect would never make the first move. Seeing that the youngster was standing still, Snake looked a little impatient. Aren't you going to ask the person in charge to come out? Or are you the person in charge here? I'm just a security guard, Crispy Noodles answered honestly. In reality, he had been assigned to many departments in the battle sect, and was a proper replacement player. Wherever he was needed, he would go. Today he was in charge of security, but tomorrow he might become the disciples' coach and guide their cultivation. As Wang Ling's sub-account, Crispy Noodles was just a real clone, but he unexpectedly gave people a reliable and reassuring feeling. When the disciples in the Sentry Tower saw Crispy Noodles arrive, they breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts. Almost all the disciples in Battle Sect knew how strong Elder Crispy Noodles was. "Mr. Security Guard, your Battle Sect stole our people, so you should give them back to us. If you persist in going about things the wrong way, we'll have to take them by force," Snake threatened. Crispy Noodles sighed in his heart, lamenting that the foreigner in front of him had so much nonsense to say, and he suspected that he was exaggerating the number of words. Instead, he was hoping that Snake would act faster. Until he saw Lu Gang galloping towards him from the horizon. "So that's how it is. It's all God's will." The young man raised his head and stared through the layers of clouds at the approaching beam of light. He immediately understood who the culprit was. There was only one person in the entire universe who could achieve such finger strength. The strongest person was about to be eliminated, so there was no point in fighting. The young man sighed in disappointment and turned to return to the sect. As soon as he took a step forward, Snake reached out and pressed his shoulder. "You want to leave? It's not that easy." The domineering spiritual power passed through Snake's body like an electric current, and the young man's body paused for a moment before he ignored the pressure and continued walking forward. Snake was furious in his heart. Although he had long heard that since the rise of the battle sect, each disciple inside was more arrogant than the other, why was even a security guard so King awesome? "You're going too far." The next moment, Snake roared, and his body began to multiply at a speed visible to the naked eye. He swelled into a steel giant that was 10 meters tall. This was the body doubling amplification spell, a spell that developed the body's potential to the extreme. A huge shadow covered the sky and the sun, completely blocking out the sunlight overhead. As expected of young Master Ling, he even managed to capture the situation after the amplification. Crispy Noodles' expression was indifferent as he continued to stride forward expressionlessly. When he had seen the phenomena pillar flying toward him earlier, there had actually been a deviation of several meters. That was to say, if Snake hadn't used this amplification spell, he would have been able to escape this calamity. But now, it was almost certain death. The next second, under everyone's watchful eyes, a needle flew down from the sky and hit the back of Snake's head with a poochie sound, directly piercing through his entire head. It was a bloodless needle. But the moment it pierced through, it disintegrated all of Snake's brain tissue. His huge body crashed down in front of the mountain gate, and then his body, which had expanded dramatically, gradually shrank. Crispy Noodles didn't even turn his head, because this was what he had already expected. At this point, the group of scavengers in front of the mountain gate were all stunned. "Captain," they weren't in a hurry to get revenge. Instead, they immediately surrounded Snake and took out all kinds of emergency magic treasures to save him. When the scanner scanned Snake's brain, one of the team members was already so shocked that he couldn't speak, because the scan showed that Snake's head was completely hollow. The moment the flying needle pierced through, the entire brain had been incinerated completely by the overflowing energy. Brain dead, there was no saving him. Several scavengers quickly made their judgment. Someone tried to get revenge, but was intercepted by another person. This was the deputy captain of the scavengers, named Kaz. "The entire security team killed our captain without even looking back. If you go over like this, you'll just be sending yourself to death." The people of Battle Sect were terrifyingly strong, even more so than the rumors said. The situation in front of them was already beyond Kaz's understanding. What on earth did he do? "No, I didn't see it at all. It looked like a magic treasure, coming from afar." That's too scary. He clearly didn't even lift his hand. Did he use his mind to control the magic treasure? At the very least, it's an upper-class holy weapon. No, it might be world-defying. He didn't even have any spiritual energy fluctuations just now, and didn't even consume spiritual energy to activate a world-defying magic treasure. As the scavengers discussed this, they all felt chills run down their spines and their hair stand on end. Let's not act rashly for now, let's report the situation to Lord Judgment first. Kes frowned, and immediately directed everyone to quickly leave Battle Sex Mountain Gate with Snake's corpse. They still had a void magic ball given to them by Lord Judgment, but so far they didn't know what this magic ball was for. As the foreigners left, the disciples on sentry duty at the sentry tower also lifted the danger alarm, and the entire battle sect was in high spirits. Did you see that? Elder Crispy Noodles is too strong. I saw it. It looked like he used his mind to activate the magic treasure and directly killed that troublemaker captain. Is that foreigner really dead? He should be. Look at the way the rest of them are scurrying away like rats, they've obviously been scared. Look at Elder Crispy Noodles, he looks so calm and collected. He didn't even lift his hand during the whole process, and there wasn't even any spiritual energy fluctuations. And when that foreigner leader's body swelled up, Elder Crispy Noodles actually chose to turn back. It looks like Elder Crispy Noodles has already decided that this person is dead for sure, so he turned back. Real men. They never look behind them. Crispy Noodles smiled bitterly in his heart at these remarks. Although he was a fill-in player, he hadn't expected that he would also have to fill in as the scapegoat. Wasn't this stealing Audio's job? Chapter 1233. The scavengers had been repelled for the time being, but that didn't mean the matter was over. This was just the beginning of chaos. Audio was still pressing on with his questioning of Cleone. On the other side, the various forces were also making their own moves. The towering Huagua Water Curtain Group building was empty. Everyone had been evacuated in advance. Only the men in black who had been sent out earlier were left to report on their work. Sunny Yuan's face was exceptionally ugly. He hadn't expected so many people to be involved this time. Not only were overseas foundations and combat sects involved, but even the main alliance was also involved. Furthermore, it seemed that these forces had branches that were secretly fighting each other. Legend has it that the Foundation has a scavengers team, which are killing machines specially bred by the Foundation. I never thought it would actually be true. When the men in black finished their report, Jiang Xiaoche also had a very surprised expression. Then he frowned deeply. Master, I'm afraid we've already exposed our identities by getting involved this time. Sunny Yuan glanced at Jiang Xiaoche and shook his head. No, the truth is that our operation this time was secretly instructed by the main alliance. Otherwise, do you think I would have the guts to get involved in this matter? Instructed by the main alliance. Jiang Xiaoche was even more surprised. To be exact, it was directly instructed by His Excellency. It's actually His Excellency. Jiang Xiaoche's eyes widened. Judging from the outcome of this operation, the situation is worse than I thought. Since His Excellency instructed me to get involved, it proves that there might already be a spy in the main alliance that His Excellency doesn't trust. Saying this, Old Man Sun frowned slightly. It was just that they still didn't know where on earth this spy came from. Was it someone from the Foundation? Or was it an unknown force from somewhere else? None of this was known at the moment. Sunny Yuan was a veteran. A company could never be above the state, he understood this principle. Although Huagua Water Curtain Group was astonishingly wealthy, Sunny Yuan wouldn't get involved in this matter without authorization. Of course, as a businessman, the more Old Fox Sun took the risk to get involved this time, the more conditions Huagua Water Curtain Group would raise. Sunny Yuan didn't lack anything in his life, be it wealth, beautiful women, or any novel objects. Everything a secular person wanted was fleeting in his eyes. The only person he treasured was his granddaughter. As long as Lotus Sun's yin and yang death tribulation wasn't resolved, he would be on tenterhooks. Thus, Sunny Yuan's condition was that after this matter was over, he wanted the headquarters to do their utmost to break the yin-yang death tribulation. Looks like we have no choice but to interfere in this matter. When Jiang Xiaoqie heard this, he understood Huaguo Water Curtain Group's current situation. Judging from the current events, the General Alliance might have lost the trust of that lord because of the traitor. That lord had no choice but to ask the Huaguo Water Curtain Group to secretly investigate. They were already involved in this matter, so it was naturally impossible for them to escape unscathed. However, there was one thing that Jiang Xiaoqie did not quite understand. He bluntly asked, why did that lord not allow the battle sect to investigate? I was also thinking about this before. Old Man Sun said, maybe you have your own concerns. Or perhaps Master feels that the battle sect has a close relationship with the Headquarter Alliance, and that there might be a mole within. But the problem is that the person has already been snatched away by the war sect. Jiang Xiaoqie wanted to cry, but no tears came out. They were now caught in the middle, and their situation was very awkward. They couldn't win in a fight, and couldn't extricate themselves from this matter. The whole situation was quite unfavorable for Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Most importantly, their actions just now had exposed their identities. The mole at the headquarters and the Foundation scavengers could make a move on Huaguo Water Curtain Group at any time. This situation of being attacked from the front and the back could be said to be a stalemate. Now, Jiang Xiaoqie finally understood why Sunny Yuan had ordered all the employees in the building to be evacuated yesterday. Obviously, the old man didn't want to implicate the innocent employees. Now we can only gamble. After thinking about it, Old Man Sun quickly made a decision. Everyone else evacuate. Xiaoqie, come with me to the Sun family treasury. Hearing this, Jiang Xiaoqie's pupils shrank. Master, since we're already involved and can't extricate ourselves, there's no harm in blowing things up a little. Saying this, Old Man Sun got up and took off his suit jacket. Underneath the jacket, his strong muscles pushed up his white shirt, which was especially conspicuous. Going to the Sun family treasury, how many years had it been since Jiang Xiaoqie had heard this sentence? This was the signal that Old Man Sun was going to the treasury to retrieve his ancestral magic artifact and was personally coming out of retirement. At that moment, Sunny Yuan wasn't sure if he could trust Battle Sect. But as long as he gave it a try, everything would become clear. On the other side, Audhua had already made a new breakthrough in his questioning of Cowan. Their topic had already turned to hollow spirits. This was a strange and mysterious term that Audhua had only heard today. There's actually such a thing as a void invasion. Audhua was secretly astonished after listening to Cowan's words. These had all been Gu Xuanji's deductions at first, but Audhua hadn't expected them to be confirmed by Cowan. Void invasion, you've summed it up very well. Cowan smiled bitterly. Our world is indeed suffering from the merciless invasion of void creatures. Did you come to Xiao Nation to investigate 20 years ago? To be exact, it should be earlier. The large amount of evidence I have shows that the hollow spirits appeared earlier than the Foundation thought, Cowan said. It's just that they've been secretly observing humans before this, and have been lurking in the human world for a very long time. Furthermore, there weren't many of them at the beginning. They didn't reach the point where we needed to be on guard at all. Observing humans. Audhua couldn't help sighing when he heard this. Just like humans playing with little insects in a greenhouse. Cowan smiled. That's a very good analogy. Perhaps to them, we are indeed like insects trapped in a greenhouse. Because the hollow spirits themselves are indeed a higher form of life. They're like wind and light, like clouds and fog, they don't have a physical body, but they're extremely intelligent. But why would such highly intelligent creatures be interested in ants in their eyes? The evidence I have so far is still limited, so I can only make assumptions, Cowan said. After a long period of observation, I realized that they seem to be looking for something. The current void invasion is precisely because of this thing. What kind of thing? Audra asked. It doesn't have to be something, it could also be a person, Cowan replied. Chapter 1234. After this conversation, Kuhn's nervousness had clearly eased a lot. Perhaps it was because Snake's death made him feel like a burden had been lifted from his heart. As one of the investigators, he had felt and seen too many of his colleagues die at the hands of scavengers. At some point in time, Kuhn had also started to fear scavengers in the depths of his heart. But now, with Snake's death, everything had become a relief. It was as if Battle's sect had become Kuhn's safe haven. Staying in the True Venerate Great Hall in the hinterland gave Kuhn a sense of security. This newly established sect had leapt to the top 10 of the world's sects at an almost bizarre speed. It firmly occupied the throne of third place. Apart from the fact that its economy and the overall quality of its disciples couldn't compare to the top 2 sects, it was practically beaten in every other aspect. The first 2 required a long period of development to accumulate. After all, Battle's sect was a newly established sect, and it had already been very difficult for it to reach this stage. You don't think it's necessarily an object, but a person. Audra frowned deeply when he heard Kuhn's speculation. If it was to find an object, he thought of his Shifu's omniscient elephant's pillar. But it wasn't like his Shifu wouldn't return the pillar. Was it worth it for a hollow spirit to riot over a magic artifact? The omniscient elephant's pillar definitely wasn't the only thing in the void behind the gate of the void. Furthermore, it had to be something even more powerful. In comparison, Audra felt that the weight of this omniscient elephant's pillar didn't seem to be that high. But if they were here to find someone, that would be a very wide range. Even if they narrowed it down, it seemed that they could only lock onto Huaxiu Nation. 20 years ago, the Foundation had sent Kuhn to investigate Huaxiu Nation in order to investigate the hidden hollow spirits in Huaxiu Nation. Looking at the overall data, Huaxiu currently had the most hidden hollow spirits in its territory. Hence, all of this was because of a certain person in Huaxiu Nation. At this point, the situation gradually became clear. Is there any way to identify hidden hollow spirits? As I said before, hollow spirits are high-level creatures without a physical body. When they reside in a human body, there's bound to be a rejection reaction. A rejection reaction. It's only at the beginning. Hollow spirits are extremely adaptable. The faster ones will be able to adapt in a day, the slower ones will need about 5 days. However, no matter how fast or slow they are, they will need to drink a red medicinal soup. How did you know? Audra was amazed. I've had cases of people being possessed by hollow spirits. That gave me good information. At this point, Cohen couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Riches come with risks. What I'm doing is very dangerous. If I'm found out that I'm testing the hollow spirit, I'll definitely die. Using the body of a human to deal with an unknown higher being. Hearing this, even Audra couldn't help but admire Keon's courage. He sensed the spirit of a desperate man from Korn. In fact, the investigators of the SBP Foundation all had this spirit. It was the mission of every SBP investigator to do their best to unearth and pursue the truth. Audra couldn't help recalling the extreme weather when he had hugged a tree and reported for duty at the front. Then, the reporters and cameramen who were swept away by floods or hurricanes. I took a sample of the red decoction and wanted to take it to the Foundation for testing. Where is Ben now? I don't have it with me, it's in my apartment. I don't know if it was destroyed by the scavengers. Korn frowned deeply. Given their ability, it shouldn't be hard for them to find out where I live. It seemed that the key was the sample of the red decoction. If they could crack the secret, they might be able to discover the difference between human cultivators who were possessed by hollow spirits and ordinary human cultivators. I'll think of something about the decoction. After saying this, Audua looked at Immortal Jinyuan next to him. Senior, did you hear that? Please help me find this decoction. That's easy. Immortal Jinyuan nodded. With a turn of his body, his entire body turned into a cloud of smoke and disappeared. Even someone as experienced and knowledgeable as Korn had never seen such frightening spatial manipulation before. What on earth is this senior's background? That's a sect secret. If you want to know, you can investigate it yourself. Korn wiped at his sweat. It's not that I haven't looked into Battle's sect, but it wasn't until today that I realized there were still a lot of things I missed. Furthermore, this is the first time I've seen a sect set up a snack shop in their own sect. In order to control what their disciples ate, large sects usually didn't set up this kind of snack shop. They ate too much puffed and fried food and carbonated drinks. Over the years, this would have a huge impact on the growth and development of the spirit root. This was also why people who liked to drink fat otaku cola generally had low cultivation levels. A certain expert had once publicly published this opinion in Cultivator Has a Say Daily. Of course Audua knew what Korn was trying to say by specifically mentioning the snack shop. He smiled slightly. Actually, I don't think that eating snacks will necessarily have an impact on one's realm. When a person's realm and strength had already reached a sufficiently heaven-defying level, how could they be swayed by a few bags of snacks? Audua had also thought this way when he was younger. But after meeting his adorable little Shifu, he felt that a whole new world had opened up to him. Wang Ling's existence had completely subverted his understanding of cultivation. In Audua's eyes, the so-called impact of eating snacks on one's realm was simply a paradox. Cultivators just needed to have a limit to everything they did. Thus, Audua believed that eating less or occasionally wouldn't have an impact on the development of the spirit root. I don't agree with Mr. Zhua's point of view. The reason I have my current cultivation is because I've never eaten those so-called junk foods since I was a child. Korn smiled. But in the next moment, Audua's soul interrogation stunned Korn on the spot. But Mr. Korn, do you think you've been happy all this time? Korn fell silent. I know that it might be very difficult to change Mr. Korn's understanding of cultivation in the short term, Audua said. Audua said, but if Mr. Klein is willing to join our sect and fully understand our corporate culture, so Mr. Zhuo wants to pull me in? Keon stopped Audua from speaking. After going around in a big circle, he finally understood Audua's meaning after hearing this. Sure enough, the Oriental way of talking was broad and profound. Korn gasped in amazement. Audua smiled. Mr. Korn, Battle's sect won't easily extend an olive branch. Korn thought for a bit and also smiled. Once this is over, I'll think about it. The two of them chatted as they waited for Immortal Jinyuan to bring back a sample of the red medicine. At that moment, a disciple outside the door hurried in. Report Mr. Sun of Huagua Water Curtain Group requests an audience. Mr. Sun. The visitor was a little unexpected for Audua. At the same time, Audua felt that this person was quite difficult to deal with. After all, there was a small chance that this person would become Audua's Shifu's father. Simply put, there was an extremely small chance that this person would become Audua's future Shifu. Then Audua's attitude towards this person, whether Sunny Yuan was here to cause trouble or not, Audua had to consider it carefully. Chapter 1235. Battle Sect Central Lakeside was a place specially built for disciples who specialized in water magic. A pavilion stretched along an elegant winding corridor along the shore to the center of the lakeside, dividing the entire lake. Under the baptism of the moonlight, it had the beauty of yin and yang separating the dusky dawn. Sun Yun entered through the mountain gate, and after being informed by a battle sect disciple, he was led here. When he left the mountain this time, he was already prepared to fight. However, he did not expect that the way the war sect treated him was unusually gentle. On his way here, Sun Yun had just received news that one of the scavengers had died. One of the team leaders had already died. No one had seen how he had died, but the intelligence indicated that he had been killed by a security guard. When he had first received this news, Sun Yun had thought that something had gone wrong. In the end, when he had just passed the mountain gate, he had seen a youngster who looked a little like Wang Ling, but who was fundamentally different, looking at him with a smile. Although he looked like Wang Ling, he knew very well that this wasn't Wang Ling. His aura was fundamentally different, and from what he had always observed about Wang Ling wasn't someone who knew how to smile. But this youngster in front of the mountain gate was smiling at him. It was a smile that sent chills down his spine and made his hair stand on end. If he were to fight with that youngster just now, what were his chances of winning? Sun Yun had been pondering this question on his way to the central lakeside. Battle sect's battle strength was too terrifying. Even the security guard at the entrance was a sweeping monk. No wonder Battle sect had been able to quickly secure its throne as the #1 sect in Huaxiao Nation in just a few short months after its establishment. If this continued, Battle sect would probably be able to easily take down the #1 position in the world. Sun Yun waited in the pavilion for a while. Before long, footsteps could be heard in the corridor, and in the pale and bright moonlight, he saw the newcomer's face. It was a young man who looked a little ugly. At first, Sun Yun didn't recognize him. Then, the young man said, "Mr. Sun, it's our battle sect's great fortune to have come to visit. May your immortal luck prosper." This familiar voice instantly evoked Sun Yun's thoughts, and he immediately narrowed his eyes. I'm Audua." Audua revealed his true identity without any hesitation after he had pinched his face. "As expected, you weren't caught." Sun Yun smiled. "It seems that Mr. Sun has expected this. I can roughly guess that you've already escaped, but I don't know where you are." With his hands behind his back, Old Man Sun gently floated up and left the pavilion. His body was as light as duckweed as he stood on the surface of the lake. There were only a few ripples and a few circles of ripples. Audua followed Old Man Sun's example and also stood on the surface of the lake, the two of them looking at each other deeply in the soft moonlight. "Dakong has his eyes on you, and you're also the person most likely to succeed him as the leader of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools in the future." Sun Yun said, "I originally had some doubts about his choice, but now it seems that you do have some ability." "Mr. Sun is too kind, little Zhuzi was just lucky." Audua cupped his fists in salute. He saw that Sun Yun had changed into a set of light sportswear. He could roughly guess the purpose of this old man's trip up the mountain. "Is Mr. Sun planning to use violence to get me back?" Audua asked. The corners of Sun Yun's mouth twitched when he heard this. As the chairman of Huaguo Water Curtain Group, he had indeed come in person with the intention of fighting. But the problem was that they were being too polite. How could he make a move? He had even taken out the ancestral magic weapon, Gold and Jade Sky Shocking Rod, from the Sun family's treasury. How about I guess the purpose of Mr. Sun's trip? Seeing that Sun Yun wasn't speaking, Audua began to analyze the situation. Mr. Sun did indeed intend to fight us at first. But after entering our battle sect's mountain gate, Mr. Sun realized that we weren't hostile, so perhaps the general purpose of Mr. Sun's trip was to test our battle sect strength. "You've seen through everything," Old Man Sun chuckled. Of course, the reason why he hadn't made a move wasn't entirely because he had realized that battle sect wasn't hostile towards him. It was because he had realized that even if he did make a move, he might not necessarily be able to beat the security guard at the gate. He was a true immortal, but he had been frightened by the imposing manner of a security guard. If he really couldn't beat him, wouldn't he become the laughingstock of the world? And the most important thing was that if word got out, Wagwa Water Curtain Group's stock price would definitely plummet. As a businessman, in order to preserve his integrity, after careful consideration, Sun Yun felt that directly making a move wasn't appropriate. Furthermore, a fight between true immortals would cause too much of a commotion, enough to destroy a city. We've already backed up the video footage of Klein's interrogation. On the lake, Chua said frankly, if Mr. Sun wants to see it, I can take Mr. Sun there now. You're quite honest. Sun Yun looked at Chua. Aren't you worried that I'm not on your side? Chua smiled. No matter how bold a financial group is, it's impossible for them to go against the head alliance. Unless Mr. Sun is acting on someone's orders. Chua had thought of this when he had listened to Immortal Jin Yuan's analysis in the Wuling Hongguang van about the smell of medicine on some of the people on the road. So when he thought about it further, it was very obvious whose orders Wagwa Water Curtain Group was acting on. Ever since the head alliance was established, it's been that Lord's. Our battle sect relied on it to grow. Naturally, we will stand on that Lord's side unconditionally. Chua bowed again. Mr. Sun, do you know why I asked to meet you here? In the evening breeze, Sun Yun's gaze was incomparably tranquil as he looked at the bright moon reflected on the lake in front of him. Hard like a bright moon. Old man Sun stared at the moon, his tense heart relaxing a little. He sighed in his heart. It was a good thing that Battle Sect wasn't an enemy, they weren't on the other side. Otherwise, the outcome would have been really hard to predict. Just sending out the security guards at the door would have been enough to kill like crazy. We will share the following information with Mr. Sunday. If Mr. Sun trusts us, we will share it with you. If Mr. Sun trusts us, we can also share some of what we know. Saying this, the phone in Chua's trouser pocket vibrated. Immortal Jin Yuan had returned. Chua learned that the sample of the red medicine was in perfect condition. The main thing was that Klein had stored it in a very tricky place. He had actually put it in the toilet. When Immortal Jin Yuan had arrived, Klein's place of residence had been a mess, and it had clearly been searched by the scavengers. But they had never expected Klein's action of putting the sample in the toilet would imperceptibly protect the sample. Because before this bunch of scavengers had opened the toilet, in this way, Lord Ma had already sent the sample away. When Immortal Jin Yuan went over again, Lord Ma had sent the sample back. Chapter 1236. There was no toilet in this world that was stronger than Lord Ma. Not only was he an enlightened spiritual monster who had seen the buttocks of the men from the Wang family, but he was also a spiritual monster who controlled the toilets of the entire earth. If he reached the standard of a grade 4 enchantment, this range could be expanded. As Wang Ling's chief disciple, he naturally knew how powerful Lord Ma was. This kind of teleportation ability could only be described as heaven-defying. This matter is all thanks to Lord Ma. Chua listened to Immortal Jin Yuan's explanation in the Great Hall of True Venerated. He couldn't help but mutter to himself again. Who is Lord Ma? Sun Yun sat on the guest chamberlain's chair and revealed a curious look. Lord Ma was an enlightened gremlin, so of course Chua couldn't reveal his identity. However, he didn't want to lie to old man Sun, so he thought of a reasonable explanation. He's an excellent courier. Then the courier has done a good job. Sun Yun was also full of praise. He is indeed dedicated. Chua nodded. Lord Ma's professionalism wasn't just for show. He heard that Lord Ma was in a relationship recently. And his love partner was the cosmic god tree that had previously drained his nutrients. This should be the first among all the monsters in the Wang family's small villa to be single. What was even more unexpected was that Lord Ma, who was no longer single, actually didn't look that young. However, as the saying goes, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Miss Cosmic God Tree liked Lord Ma, so there was nothing she could do about it. It could only be said that it was worthy of being a spiritual monster that was enlightened by Master. She was clearly in love, but she still completed her mission. Hearing this, Immortal Jin Yuan couldn't help sighing at Ajua's eloquence. He could turn the story of a greedy girl begging for fertilizer into a love story of a dedicated courier. Ajua was indeed a rare talent. How long will the test take? Old Man Sun sat in the guest seat and took a sip of tea. He had been observing Immortal Jin Yuan since the beginning. Because this was another expert he didn't know. In his heart, he was glad that he didn't really make a move just now. Otherwise, he would have no place to hide his old face. This Shan Zongtian was too terrifying. Nameless experts at the level of sweeping monks were everywhere. This was King ridiculous. Immortal Toya is already experimenting, it should be soon. However, in the end, I'm afraid that our Battle Sex medicinal laboratory is not as advanced as Mr. Sun's groups. Speaking up to this point, Ajua narrowed his eyes slightly and smiled. Everyone knows that Huaguo Water Curtain Group built the first 5th grade elixir laboratory in the country. Unfortunately, our battle sect is currently short on funds, and we still have so many disciples to feed. We still can't afford to open this laboratory. Sunny Yuan choked on his saliva. He wasn't a fool, and of course he understood what Ajua was hinting at. No, this already couldn't be considered a hint. In Ajua's view, it was already clear. However, Sunny Yuan did not intend to accept this. The construction cost of a level 5 pill laboratory was especially expensive, at least 1 billion immortal gold. With this amount of money, he could open a new sky-class sect. Any investment must pay attention to the return, and he was not a philanthropist. He was a businessman, and he would not invest without a good reason. Contrary to Sunny Yuan's expectations, Ajua actually didn't continue pestering him, and instead changed the topic back to Keone. Mr. Keone, I remember that the SBP Foundation was also founded by the International Alliance of Cultivators back then. That's right. Keone nodded. This was a fact that everyone knew, so there was nothing to hide. Let me get a little gossip. How much did you invest in the initial establishment? I think it was 1.5 billion immortal gold, and that's just the operational investment. If you add in the equipment and site, the total investment is already over 3 billion. Does the foundation also have an elixir laboratory? Yes. It's a level 5 pill laboratory. It was built by Michio Nation's Torinos Pill Company. That can't be, right? It costs a lot to build a level 5 pill laboratory. Which entrepreneur would invest for no reason? Ajua had an incredulous expression on his face. Mr. Zhua, you have to believe that there are still people in this world who are true, kind, and beautiful, and who sincerely contribute to world peace. Keone's words were very sincere. After saying this, he glanced at Sunny Yuan out of the corner of his eye. Of course, not all outstanding entrepreneurs have this kind of awareness. Hearing this, Old Man Sun's hand holding the teacup started to tremble. He was now especially regretful. He shouldn't have chosen to come to Battle Sect from the very beginning. Wasn't this clearly extortion on the basis of morality? From start to finish, Ajua hadn't asked him to help Battle Sect set up a laboratory. But after gossiping with Keone, every word Keone said struck at Ajua's heart. It was the kind of a strike at the heart that killed and strike at the heart. As an outstanding entrepreneur, Sunny Yuan indeed felt as if his conscience had been shaken. At this point, looking at Sunny Yuan's expression, Ajua knew that the matter of the Battle Sex Level 5 laboratory was basically settled. Although this old man's son didn't say anything, his heart had probably already sunk into a deep, moral vortex. Although his methods were a little despicable, there were times when despicable and shameful, but they were useful. Since things had already progressed to this point, there was naturally no way for Audra to stop. In the end, he stared at Sunny Yuan and added the final blow. I know that Mr. Sun is an outstanding entrepreneur, and definitely has the same corporate conscience as Torino's pill company. Of course, Sunny Yuan took a deep breath and gritted his teeth as he stared at Audra. Don't worry, Mr. Zhua. Once this matter is over, my Huaguo Water Curtain Group will invest in the construction of the Battle Sex Level 5 laboratory. How can I accept this? Hearing this, Audra immediately got up. What virtue or ability does my battle sect have to accept such a big gift from Mr. Sun? But then again, this is definitely of Mr. Sun's own free will, right? Otherwise, if word gets out that my battle sect is coercing you, we can't afford to lose our reputation. Old Man Sun did his best to maintain a smile. Of my own free will, all of this stems from my entrepreneur's conscience, and so, in this delightful conversation about entrepreneur's conscience, it was as if Audra could hear his teeth grinding. But he was certain. This probably wasn't an illusion. It was already 2:12 in the morning on Thursday, November 26th. He hadn't fallen asleep yet. After finishing his homework, he had been secretly assisting in the investigation of the Foundation. According to the clues left behind by Warden Liang, there were 7 main envoys behind the scenes of the Foundation. Book of Sage Immortal listed these 7 people in detail in front of Wang Ling. This was the relevant information extracted from Warden Liang's soul memory. And his soul was already under Wang Ling's protection. Position 1, Moon. Gender unclear, but a gentle person. Position 2, Star. More intelligence than the others. Claims to have prophetic abilities. Position 3, Sunday. Always exudes a sense of justice like a big brother. Position 4, Judgment. Host of the meeting. Voice shrill and funny. Gender unclear. Position 5, War Chariot. Like his code name, his style is full of violence. Position 6, Fate. A man of few words, but can always give hints at critical moments. Position 7, The Fool. Always leaves the meeting midway. Very mysterious. After reading this, Wang Ling felt like he was playing werewolf killer. Then, among these 7 people, who on earth was the Void Spy, and how many wolves were there? Chapter 1237. St. Pius Cathedral, the base of the Moon Emissary. The glazed glass roof of the cathedral shone with a rainbow of colors under the sunlight. Sitting in the middle of the cathedral, one would have the illusion of living in a rainbow illusion. For every believer who believed in God, this was undoubtedly the closest place to God. A nun in black robes and a veil stepped into the cathedral. She walked up the wide aisle, and the bright moonlight shone through the top of the wall, illuminating the tranquil face of the Moon Emissary. The Moon Emissary gazed at the mural of God on the prayer altar with her silver-white eyes and prayed devoutly. A moment later, her thoughts were led, and her whole body turned into a black shadow, sitting in the spiritual space. No one could have imagined that the legendary Moon Emissary's true identity was nothing more than a nun of a church. At this moment, she sat dignifiedly on a bench in the spiritual space. At this moment, the Moon Emissary felt like she had become God, looking down on all living things. The existence of the Foundation greatly satisfied her vanity. And this was also the reason why she had agreed to join the SBP in the first place. The Moon Emissary opened her eyes. The neatness of the people in this meeting was somewhat unexpected. All 7 emissaries were here. Reliable news: Snake was killed by a fighter from the battle sect, and Cohen betrayed us. The Judgment Emissary, as the host of the meeting, told everyone the unfortunate news. Everyone present had different reactions to Snake's death. The most shocked person was the Moon Goddess. With his strength, he actually died at the hands of the battle sect. What a useless piece of trash. The chariot emissary hammered the table, looking very angry. Didn't he find out anything before he died? Not at all. The star emissary smiled slyly. The information he had obtained was no less than that of the judgment emissary. I'm afraid even the judgment emissary would not have thought that Snake would die at the hands of a battle sect security guard. Security guard. The rest of the people fell silent upon hearing this. Many people's hearts trembled wildly. It wasn't just the judgment emissary. Everyone here seemed to have underestimated the combat power of the battle sect. In this day and age, how could there be a lunatic sect that used a true immortal as a security guard? Snake's strength was at half-step true immortal, just a little bit more and he would be able to leap into the realm of true immortal. To be able to defeat Snake, even if he was a security guard, he would at least have the strength of a true immortal. I've already organized the scavengers to temporarily retreat. I don't know if anyone has any opinions or thoughts. Su-bai looked at each and every one of them. As the host of the conference, the legendary Judgment Messenger of the Foundation, he felt that he had seen through everything. After becoming a higher-level creature, their ability to obtain information was naturally extraordinary. He could communicate directly with the Void Master and ask for his help. Let the Lord use the supreme power of the Void to give him all the answers he wanted. Therefore, he already knew the identity of every single person here, including the residents of every single emissary. Snake's death was something he had long foreseen. As long as the Void Orb existed, he would be able to absorb Snake's soul immediately after his death and transform Snake into a high-level ethereal. At that time, as long as he killed anyone here, and then let Snake invade the Void, he would be able to control one more emissary. After that, as long as he repeated the above actions, the entire Foundation would fall into his hands. But right now, the most important thing was still acting. He couldn't directly reveal everyone's identity. And Su-bai was deeply conflicted as to whose body he should let Snake invade. He had to observe first and see who would dare disobey him. It's too dangerous for the scavengers to remain in Huaxiao. I think we should withdraw them all for now and wait and see. At that moment, Sun Messenger said, the scavengers have done a lot for the Foundation over the years. Once they fall into the hands of another country, everything the Foundation has done will be exposed. But the problem is, Cleon is already in their hands, isn't he? Tank continued to slap the table in an unusually irritable manner. The scavengers have higher priority than these investigators, and they may not know about the scavengers. Sun Messenger insisted on his point of view. All these years, the scavengers have done nothing that can be used against them. They've done a great job, haven't they? Tank was furious. I still don't agree. The death of the scavengers is tantamount to the Foundation being humiliated in another country. We must get back at them. The dispute between Sun and Tank was to be expected. Their personalities were as different as heaven and earth. But after both of them expressed their views, there seemed to be a focus of discussion in this meeting. As usual, whether the scavengers stay or leave will be decided by a vote. The minority must obey the majority, Su-bai said as envoy of judgment. Sun Messenger was considering the Foundation's long-term development, but he seemed to prefer Tank Messenger's way of handling things. In any power struggle, if all the plans were too conservative, sooner or later the Foundation would be nibbled away. Under his control, the Foundation had to grow stronger. Therefore, it was crucial to establish the Foundation's prestige. Su-bai wasn't afraid of Battle Sect at all. In his opinion, Battle Sect was nothing more than a stepping stone for the Foundation's development. It was destined to serve him. I support Tank's view. So, he spoke first to express his opinion. It was rare for the host to express his opinion first. Looking at this scene, Sun Messenger instantly felt a hint of anger rise in his heart. He had the feeling that he was being targeted. When he saw the other envoys vote one after another, this surging anger was on the verge of erupting. Moon. Star. Fate. What on earth do the three of you mean? Sun Messenger questioned the three of them. Moon, haven't you always advocated peace? Why would you agree with Tank Messenger's violent style? Nun Moon was silent. She actually didn't have her own opinion, and following the crowd was her usual practice. Star Messenger, although Sun Messenger's words are reasonable, I always follow my own judgment. At this time, Sun Messenger looked at Fate. Like before, Fate fell silent again. Finally, everyone's eyes turned to the only person who didn't express his opinion. The Fool, what do you think? Subai stared at the black shadow sitting at the back and narrowed his eyes. The Fool often left midway through a meeting. This was the only time the Fool didn't leave. But now it seemed that the Fool's vote was meaningless. Even if he voted for Sun, this vote was destined to be won by Tank. In the silence, everyone seemed to hear a rustling sound, as if someone was chewing something. Who's secretly eating snacks during a meeting? Subai asked in surprise. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound. They were surprised to find that the sound came from the Fool in the seventh seat. It was coming from the black shadow that the Fool had transformed into. Although they couldn't see the Fool's face and could only see a black shadow, they could clearly see what the black shadow was doing. They saw the Fool seem to have opened a new bag of packaging, took out the seasoning packet, and skillfully tore it open and sprinkled it in. Then he put his hands together and crushed the snacks. Subai's heart skipped a beat when he saw this. From what he knew, the Fool was not like this. He didn't have a hobby of eating snacks. But who was this Fool? And this action of opening the bag of snacks seemed a little familiar to Subai, his gaze touched. Deep in his heart, an inexplicable sense of fear was awakened at this moment. Chapter 1238. Half an hour before the Foundation meeting began. Book of Sage Immortal had divined the identity of the Fool, one of the 7 envoys. It suggested that Wang Ling used the temporary possession spell to enter the body of the Fool. This kind of possession was temporary, and could achieve a temporary soul exchange. The advantage was that it could infiltrate seamlessly without anyone noticing. So, Wang Ling wasn't really the Fool. What Wang Ling hadn't expected was, his habit of secretly snacking raised questions among the other envoys present. Fortunately, he hadn't been completely exposed. The most important reason was that Subai didn't believe that the Fool was Wang Ling. It couldn't be this person. In that instant, the word impossible flashed over and over in Subai's mind. According to the information he had gathered, the Fool's true identity was a woodcutter who lived deep in the mountains, and his name was Joyce Tan Lang. Joyce Tan Lang was very strong, but he had a miserable life. He had a younger sister who had been possessed by an evil spirit since she was a child. This tyrannical evil spirit had been entrenched in his sister's body all year round and refused to come out no matter what. Apart from cultivating hard to make himself stronger, Joyce had also been looking for a way to get rid of the evil spirit. At the same time, he had been looking for a way to get rid of the evil spirit. Unfortunately, Joyce had dragged things out for too long. The evil spirit and his sister's souls had fused together, and they were now inseparable. Joyce had been able to keep his sister alive. He had no choice but to take her to live in the mountains, where spirit chi was abundant. Because of this, the signal in Joyce's mental space had always been unstable. And this was also the reason why the emissary of the Fool often left the meeting midway. So, a woodcutter who had been living in the mountains all year round with his sister who had been possessed by an evil spirit, why did he suddenly have the habit of snacking? Subai had his doubts. But he didn't believe that the woodcutter was the Fool. It was the man whom he had been longing for revenge. He had been planning everything, but he hadn't even officially launched his plan. All of the actions should be seamless. There was no way that man would have thought that he was the mastermind behind all this. So, there had to be a mistake somewhere. Or perhaps the Lord of the Void had missed some of Joyce's habits. If this was a woodcutter who loved to eat snacks, it would make sense. Joyce had sacrificed so much for her sister. He had visited so many powerful beings and remote places in search of the secret method to dispel the evil spirit. He must have his own pressure. Some people relied on typing on the keyboard to relieve stress, some live on whiskey, some people relied on recommendation votes and monthly votes. There were also people who shamelessly relied on drag to relieve stress. Of course, it did not rule out the possibility that some people ate snacks to relieve their stress. Su-bai nervously swallowed the saliva in his mouth and spoke. The fool, don't you have anything to say? He still firmly believed in the Void Lord's judgment. He confirmed that the envoy sitting in the 7th seat was the old woodman, Joyce. Not the man she wanted to take revenge on. His innocence was not the slightest bit empty. But now was not the best time for revenge. He just needed a little more time to prepare. I agree with Tank's opinion. Finally, the voice of the fool was heard. This slightly rough voice made Su-bai heave a sigh of relief. He was sure it was Joyce's voice. And his tone was exactly the same as Joyce's. In that case, 6 chariots and 1 sun. The Foundation will draw up a follow-up plan based on Tank's suggestion. After saying this, Su-bai made his final decision in the mental space. The meeting came to an end. In the bedroom of the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling opened his eyes. At the last moment of the meeting just now, Wang Ling had cancelled his temporary possession spell. He returned the body to its rightful owner, Joyce Charcoal Lang. This was a good brother who knew how to dote on his little sister. Wang Ling didn't want to implicate Joyce because of him. He had already signed a soul contract with Joyce, so he had the right to possess Joyce at any time. In return, Wang Ling promised to help Joyce cure his little sister. The evil spirit had already fused with his little sister's soul. But for Wang Ling, it would only take a flick of his finger for him to extract the evil ghost. Of course, Joyce was touched by Wang Ling's body. He felt that his unwavering devotion to his little sister all these years had touched the heavens, and he had been redeemed by God. After Wang Ling cancelled his possession, Joyce knelt down on both knees and raised his hands in prayer as he looked up at the sky and thanked God with the most devout eyes. Joyce, Lord. Thank God. If you mainly use my body, you're welcome to possess me at any time. Wang Ling, is it done? At that moment, Wang Ling turned his gaze to the tablet on the table. Although Wang Ling already had the thought of giving it away. So, he had to give it away. But for the time being, April was still useful. While my lord was possessing me, I already figured out the identities of the people in the spirit space. Book of Sage Immortal gave the results of its deductions. There was no doubt that the 7 members of the Foundation were all foreign cultivators. But that didn't rule out the possibility that some of them were colluding with the General Alliance. Among them, the probability of Tank colluding with them was as high as 87%, and he was a key target for observation. Wang Ling clicked on Tank's information. He discovered the real full name of Tank's emissary, Toy Dre. He was the big boss of a multinational spirit sword production company, and controlled more than 20 large spirit sword production factories. Every year, some of the mass-produced spirit swords in Huaxiao Nation came from Toy Dre. What astonished Wang Ling even more was that this Toy Dre actually seemed to be related by blood to someone Wang Ling knew. According to Book of Sage Immortal's bloodline analysis, Toy Dre's DNA was actually highly similar to Yi Jiang's. The two of them were actually father and son. But Yi Jiang had been alone since he was a child. It was only after General Yi had taken a fancy to his talent that he had accepted him as a disciple. His life had gradually gotten better. To be honest, if it wasn't for this bloodline data, it was hard for Wang Ling to imagine that Yi Jiang had foreign blood. It looked like Yi Jiang might have inherited more of his mother's genes. And his mother was definitely an authentic Eastern beauty. Keep investigating. Wang Ling continued to give orders to Book of Sage Immortal. He needed to know who on earth Yi Jiang's mother was. As long as his mother was on Earth, he would be able to find some suspicious clues through a large database. It might take some time to find them. But Wang Ling had plenty of time now. In fact, in the data provided by Book of Sage Immortal, Wang Ling also discovered another interesting set of data. That was the inference about the identity of Messenger of Judgment number 4. Although Book of Sage Immortal gave a 76% probability to a person called Michelle, there was still a 24% probability. It was very likely that this Michelle had already been switched. Bai Zhao. Wang Ling stared at this familiar name and smiled in his heart. He hadn't expected this cockroach to be so tenacious. Chapter 1239. Today's Bai Zhe indeed couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. Wang Ling could sense that Bai Zhe's combat strength had improved significantly. But the only thing that hadn't changed was his excessive self-confidence. Excessive self-confidence was conceit. This was also why Wang Ying had taken a liking to Bai Zhe at first, but hadn't put him in an important position. Bai Zhe was certainly strong, but conceited could easily cause trouble. So the question now was, how strong on earth was Bai Zhe? After Book of Sage Immortal examined him, it gave a definite answer. My lord, he seems to have already become a hollow spirit. Had he really been invaded by the void? Wang Ling wasn't surprised by this result, because he was well aware of President Bai's hatred for him. In order to defeat him, President Bai would rather not be human and become a so-called higher-level creature. Wang Ling could feel this hatred even from across space. Do you have a specific estimate of his combat strength? Wang Ling asked Book of Sage Immortal. It's not easy to calculate, because my current understanding of void creatures is still limited. But the first thing Bai Zhe did after becoming a hollow spirit was to absorb Devil Gut Fungus Lord. This is a creature that has been enlightened by my lord. So right now, he might be stronger than Wang Jin at his peak. Above venerated immortal was Dao Master. In other words, this person's current strength was indeed immeasurable. Back when Wang Jin had come down from Ninefold Star to seek an explanation from him, Wang Ling actually wasn't afraid. With one glance, he could tell that Wang Jin could probably withstand 5 slaps from Wang Ling at his peak. By punishing Wang Jin, the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee had actually saved his life. Otherwise, Wang Jin's soul would have long been destroyed by these 5 slaps. President Bai, who was now called Su Bai, was now stronger than Wang Jin, which instantly piqued Wang Ling's interest. Was the 10 dragon subduing slaps, which had been sealed for so many years, about to be unsealed? Elsewhere, the initial test results for the red decoction were out. Immortal Toya had never seen a substance in the decoction before. But after comparing the medicinal properties, Immortal Toya was able to find a spirit plant with a similar effect from the existing stock of medicinal herbs on Earth, but it was far less effective than the red decoction. In the Great Hall of True Venerates, Immortal Toya took out a round azure magic bowl. By touching the magic orb, he could project the images in his mind into the void. First of all, we can confirm that the spirit plant used to brew the red soup does not exist on Earth. Let's call them void plants for now. Immortal Toya said, after a reliable comparison, the medicinal properties of this void plant are similar to those of returning grass on Earth. Returning grass. Hearing this, Sunny Yuan nodded slightly. He was in the production of medicinal pills, so he was naturally very sensitive to the names of some spirit plants. The returning grass was a rare and endangered spiritual plant. It was also the main ingredient used to make the resurrection pill. It could draw back a person's soul at a critical moment and save a person's life. It was used for those critically ill patients to hang on to air. As Mr. Carown said, ethereals are a type of high-level creature. It took them a very long time to evolve themselves to the point where they have no form and are like light and wind. And when it invades the bodies of human cultivators, it actually causes great harm to them as well. Immortal Toya said, if we compare Su Ling to a brand new software, then the environment for human cultivators is like an old system. The two can't be completely compatible. That's why they need this kind of tonic to make themselves adapt quickly. Jua raised his eyebrows. That is to say, when they invade a human body, they will in fact cause some harm to themselves. Immortal Toya nodded. In theory, that's true. But the truth is that as long as they adapt to a human body, their strength won't be affected. The only thing to be aware of is that if the container they live in isn't strong enough, it's very likely that it will break. And they won't die. When the time comes, they just need to switch to a new container. Simply put, the process of adapting to a human body is when they are at their weakest. If we take action at this time, they won't be able to effectively use their strength. Given our current strength, there's still a high chance that we can defeat them and eliminate them. Immortal Toya explained the situation to them. Then he turned the magic orb in his hand to show them a newly developed purple reagent. This is the ethereal detection reagent I just formulated. It's colorless and odorless based on the restraining effect of returning grass. Only ethereals who have drunk the red soup will have a reaction. What reaction? Jua asked. If it's just a smell, the person invaded by the ethereals will feel a foul stench. Immortal Toya said, if the reagent is injected or comes into contact with a human body. In a very short period of time, the person invaded by the ethereals will instantly lose their hair and become bald. When Immortal Toya said this, everyone suddenly had a strong sense of déjà vu. Imagine if the ethereals completely broke out in the human world. If they used a reagent to detect them, then it was possible that the world would be filled with bald people. Now, because of irregular lifestyles, even the hair loss rate among college students was increasing year by year. Not to mention those in high-risk professions who had to stay up late for long periods of time. Programmers, media personnel, medical staff, teachers, web novelists. At this thought, Jua couldn't help trembling as he shivered all over. This was really a reagent that made people feel bald. I don't think we can just kill someone with a stick just because they lose their hair, right? There are still a lot of people who are bald now, Jua said. Killing them with a stick definitely won't work. Immortal Toya said, so for those who have already lost their hair, the best way is to smell it. As long as they don't feel nauseous, there's no possibility of them being invaded by the ethereals. When the time comes, we can give them a certificate or something. But how can people who have been invaded by the ethereals accept it so easily? I've also thought about that. Therefore, this matter must be a diversion. Immortal Toya said, the flu has been prevalent recently. I believe they won't refuse as long as we say it's a flu test. If they really don't cooperate, we can use the reagent in artificial rain. When the time comes, we just need to keep an eye on the streets to see if there are any people who have lost their hair after getting caught in the rain. At that moment, Sunny Yuan heaved a deep sigh and took off the wig on top of his head. Jua, Mr. Sunny Yuan, work is always stressful. A few years ago, I took hair-growing pills every day, and now my body has developed a resistance to them. Then I gave up resisting. Everyone. Chapter 1240. The successful development of the hollow test reagent finally gave everyone in Battle Sect a glimmer of hope. Their war with the hollow had already begun. But unlike previous battles, there was no smoke in the early stages of this war. Audjua's goal was very clear. 1. They had to figure out who on earth the Hollow were looking for. 2. They had to strangle the Hollow in the cradle before they found the key person and officially launched the Void invasion. "I'll take the reagent back," Old Man Sun said at that moment. Huagua Water Curtain Group had many stores, which could allow Immortal Toya's reagent to be produced in large quantities in a short period of time and shipped to its stores all over the country. Sun Yiyuan had already thought about turning all the stores in his industrial chain into invisible hollow monitoring points. Using the spell fusion test reagent to create artificial rain over a large area was the worst plan, because there was a risk of alerting the enemy. Sun Yiyuan put on the wig again and tidied up his clothes. He had never made his baldness public before, but this was a special case. Since Battle's sect was already an ally, making it public was actually a sign of trust. "Then I'll leave this matter to Mr. Sunday." Audjua, Immortal Jinyuan and Immortal Toya cupped their fists in salute. "We'll get through this together." Sun Yiyuan's expression was solemn as he cupped his fists in return. Then, Old Man Sun left in a hurry with Immortal Toya. As the reagent developer, Sun Yiyuan had already made an exception to hire Immortal Toya as chief engineer. Developing reagents was also a frontline job. Immortal Toya was deeply proud of this. Doctors were benevolent, and alchemists were also medical workers. Immortal Toya was naturally duty-bound. And so, in the early morning of November 26th, thanks to Battle Sect and Huagua Water Curtain Group's cooperation, the ins and outs of the whole matter had basically been figured out. Although there were still a lot of doubts about the matter, the general direction had been set. In just a few short hours, Immortal Toya had swiftly developed a reagent to detect the hollow. This speed was jaw-dropping. "We've already started work on the reagent, but Mr. Keon, there's something else we need your help with." Not long after Old Man Sun and Immortal Toya left, Audjua turned to look at Keon again. Keon was a smart man, and actually knew very well what Audjua wanted him to do. To be honest, he wasn't mentally prepared. Now, Keon's mood was abnormally tangled and nervous. Audjua saw that the hand he used to light his cigarette couldn't stop trembling. "I'm not afraid, I'm just..." Kun tried to explain. "I understand." Audjua stepped forward and patted Keon's thick shoulder. Now, the responsibility of revealing the truth had fallen on this man's shoulders. After finishing the cigarette, Kun pressed the cigarette butt into the ashtray at the side. Then, he took a deep breath and tried his best to calm himself down. "Mr. Joie, I'm ready." Kun stood up. Audjua had already prepared a live stream room on his side, and everything Keon said would be broadcast online to all over the world. In the information age, the power of the internet could not be underestimated. Once the traffic piled up, it could be even more terrifying than the power of live TV. According to the plan, Keon would reveal the ins and outs of the entire incident in 2 parts. In the first stage, they could not reveal anything about the arcane church for the time being. They needed to let the detection reagents run on the market and distinguish between friend and foe. When the time was right, the second stage would be when the truth would be revealed. Keon would reveal everything that the Foundation had asked him to investigate for the past 20 years. This would also include the truth about the Void invasion. Of course, in order to protect Keon, Audjua would protect Keon's identity in the first stage, and would only report the first incident as a researcher in Battle Sect. As a result, in just the morning of the same day, the video of the first stage of the war sex report spread across the entire internet at lightning speed. Daoist Guang was the head of Battle Sect's online information department. With the help of the current Big Brother in the live streaming world, the speed at which the news spread was simply appalling. In the morning courseware, Wang Ling realized that most people were discussing this matter. The main thing was that in order to let the test reagent circulate and also so that the arcane church wouldn't be suspicious, Ojwa had exaggerated the report a little. In number 60 high school alone, a lot of students and teachers were starting to panic about their hairlines. After class, there was a long queue at the entrance to the men's and women's toilets. It wasn't to go to the toilet, it was to look in the mirror. Is the bald head flu virus that Battle Sect is talking about real? Is there a virus in this world that can make people bald? In class, Hirogwa stroked his beautiful hair to confirm that it was still very healthy. The person who was least worried about this matter was Super Chin, because he had a buzz cut to begin with. For him, to be bald or not to be bald. Actually, there wasn't much of a difference. F***K. I saw some people online say that they're already bald. They lost a lot of hair in one night, and they suspect that they might have this bald head virus. At that moment, someone cried out in alarm as he scrolled through his phone. Where? Let me see. Hearing this, everyone gathered around to watch the excitement. This was just a screenshot of a chat log. It was full of text, and there weren't even any pictures. Wang Ling sighed disinterestedly. Now that the bald head virus was a hot search topic, there would always be people who liked to take advantage of this opportunity to freeload. The internet spread too quickly, and without a full understanding of the unknown, it was very easy for people to believe all kinds of rumors made up by people with ulterior motives and marketing accounts that had popped up online. As it turned out, people were even more afraid of baldness than of coughing and fevers. After Ojwa's announcement, Wagwa Water Curtain Group very quickly set up testing sites across the country. They even mobilized all their employees to carry out epidemic prevention work, set up testing sites in major public places, and linked hospitals to isolate suspected people. This kind of reaction speed was already godlike. In fact, the vast majority of people weren't at risk of baldness. All this was just a pretense to identify a hollow spirit. Sitting in his seat, Wang Ling quietly watched the performance from the Battle Sect. On one side, someone was working hard. On the other side, someone was vigorously spreading rumors for the sake of traffic. In just one morning, ginger and garlic had been sold out in the market, just because a marketing account said that garlic and ginger could prevent hair loss. Wang Ling, I remember that you have garlic-flavored crispy noodle snacks, right? Do you want to contribute some? At that moment, someone turned to look at Wang Ling and asked. Wang Ling's heart was on the verge of collapse. This person, what the hell was he thinking? Chapter 1241. Ojwa's move could be described as catching everyone off guard and catching them off guard. Apart from Battle Sect and Wagwa Water Curtain Group, the other two forces who had been fighting over Koloan earlier were also in a daze. Bald head virus, what is this? In the ancient castle, Subai vaguely felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He asked the Lord of Void for advice, and the Lord's answer was, they could use this matter as a cover to speed up their invasion of the Void. They could let more ethereals join the operation to find the people they wanted to find. For the first time, Subai, who used to be a human, had some doubts about the Lord of Void, but he didn't dare disobey him. It was the Lord of Void who had given him everything. Since he could give it to him, if he was unhappy, he wouldn't take it back. At that moment, Subai realized for the first time that ethereals had a disadvantage as advanced creatures. They were used to living a carefree life in the world of the void, and had never experienced the deceit, lies, and mutual deception of the human world. To put it bluntly, this group of ethereals, including the Lord of Void, were a bunch of honest people, through and through. Now, Subai could only pray that things would go according to plan, and that this so-called bald head virus storm wouldn't turn out to be some kind of trick. In the short span of one morning, the bald head virus storm swept the world and became a hot topic among the people. How to guard against this terrifying influenza virus instantly became the focus of all cultivators' discussion. Some experts said that washing hands and wearing masks weren't enough, because this bald head virus could also be transmitted through contact. For example, if someone who was already infected with the bald head virus stroked their head, it could also cause hair loss. Wang Ling knew that this was, of course, unreliable nonsense. But the problem was that there really were people who believed this unreliable information. Take number 60 high school as an example. That afternoon, an epidemic prevention team formed by the cultivation police and the local health department came to number 60 high school and took away several bald-headed teachers for investigation. Old Antique explained again and again to the epidemic prevention personnel in thick protective clothing, "Brother, I'm really not sick. I don't have much hair to begin with." In that short moment, Old Antique even had the urge to revert to his gorgeous itinerant true form. In his gorgeous itinerant form, he had long, elegant, waist-length hair. The feeling of being misunderstood was really unbearable. However, the epidemic prevention personnel did not listen to the explanation at all. The order they received was that they would rather kill everything by mistake than let a single one go. "Teacher, please cooperate with me first. We will bring you to the testing point later." Even if we didn't take the test, it's still a little unreasonable for the other people's scores to be 10 points behind Class 2's average. Otherwise, with Su Xiao leading the way, the gap would have been even bigger. Hirogwa sighed and said, "And it's not just our written test scores that are bad, our class's experimental scores are also lagging behind. Using an induction cooker to refine pills and causing it to explode, what a talent. Just adjust the formula according to the ratio, add water, and it'll be over." When he said this, Hirogwa deliberately spoke very softly so that he and Super Chin could ridicule each other. Although what he said was the truth, if other students heard it, it could easily affect the unity of the class. According to Hirogwa, it seemed that teacher Lu Ruoxu had recently become enlightened in teaching and had found a new teaching method, which enabled the students in Class 2 to learn new knowledge faster. Wang Ling's class had been in the lead previously, and this sudden fall behind was naturally a huge blow to Teacher Pan. In a short 10 minutes or so, teacher Lu Ruoxu, the teacher in charge of Class 2, led the inspection of Fang Xing's class. Before leaving, Lu Ruoxu was stopped by an inspector. "Teacher, you should also take the test." "All right." Teacher Lu very cooperatively sat down. The inspector sprayed a test spray on teacher Lu Ruoxu's head. Then, a scene that made everyone terrified happened. Teacher Lu Ruoxu's originally beautiful hair suddenly changed dramatically, as if she was suffering from great pain. Her face began to twist and contort, and she couldn't help scratching at her scalp with her hands. It wasn't clear whether her hair had fallen off naturally or had been torn off uncontrollably. In less than 10 seconds, all of teacher Lu Ruoxu's hair had already fallen off. "Quick! Control her!" The inspector and the surrounding students and teachers were all startled. Teacher Lu Ruoxu, who had gone berserk, had completely lost control. Boom! Bam! She abruptly stomped on the ground, and her whole body swiftly flew out, crashing through the gym ceiling. A pair of red high-heeled shoes pierced deep into the floor of the stadium like nails. It looked like this hollow spirit was trying to escape. But Wang Ling wouldn't let her do as she pleased. He would use the great gravitation spell. He immediately decided to use the gentle spell as much as possible. Without harming teacher Lu's body, he would keep her here. But in the next moment, a huge light flashed on the horizon. A meteorite fell from the distant starry sky. It was directly in the direction of number 60 High's gym. The corner of Wang Ling's eye twitched. He had tried his best to control his strength, but it seemed that he had still used a little too much force. They were complete high-level creatures, and the power of the Grand Purification spell could not work on Mr. Lu's body. In this situation, he could only think of another way. He looked up at the sky. The meteorite that had fallen due to the great gravity spell was now moving toward him at high speed. On the other side was Mr. Lu, who had gone mad after being possessed by the ethereal spirit. On one side was a falling meteorite. This situation was undoubtedly disastrous for Wang Ling. With so many eyes on him, he couldn't directly take action, and could only resolve this sudden crisis in secret. In the gymnasium, under the effect of the great gravity spell, Teacher Lu struggled to get up from the ground. The condensed version of the spell could not completely restrict Teacher Lu's freedom, but if it was the complete version, it might cause a new meteorite crisis. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. In this situation, he had to force the ethereal spirit out of Teacher Lu's body and stop the meteorite from falling. In Wang Ling's view, there was only one best way. The next moment, Wang Ling turned his finger and strengthened Teacher Lu's bald head. "Look! It's a golden legend," someone at the scene exclaimed. More than one person saw the top of Teacher Lu's head glow. This was the effect of Wang Ling's strengthening. The bright light was as dazzling as the sun that had just risen on the horizon, and people couldn't help feeling that it was a little harsh. A lot of people couldn't help covering their eyes. They didn't know what on earth was going on, but this kind of light was really too harsh. Strengthening Teacher Lu's bald head was just the first step in Wang Ling's plan. Right now, Teacher Lu was probably already the toughest woman in the universe. The next step was for Wang Ling to personally control Teacher Lu to fight the meteorite. In the blink of an eye, Teacher Lu's entire body shot out of the gymnasium like a rocket launched straight into the sky. With her dazzling bald head, she charged unstoppably toward the huge meteorite that was trying to break through the atmosphere. The ethereal spirit attached to Teacher Lu's body realized that the body it was controlling wasn't listening to its commands at all, and it couldn't help swearing. Ethereals didn't normally swear, but they were very good at learning. The ethereal spirit in Teacher Lu's body had inadvertently learned this when Teacher Lu reprimanded the students on a daily basis. A few seconds before it hit the meteorite, the ethereal spirit felt fear in its heart. It didn't know that Wang Ling had already strengthened Teacher Lu's bald head, so it couldn't make an accurate judgment of the current situation. It had already been in Teacher Lu's body for a long time, and it could be said that it had already achieved a perfect fusion. Once Teacher Lu's body was injured, it would also suffer an equal amount of damage. It absolutely couldn't let that happen.